I know it's a little warm in here. Our air conditioner was having some challenges, so it's not normally this warm, but it's nice to see so many faces in the council chambers this evening. So bear with us on the temperature. Before we begin and do the introduction of the agenda and our 3 delegations for tonight, I just want to sincerely thank all of council, as well as our senior leadership team and a couple of individuals for a really phenomenal BC Long Day weekend that we just had with both the 40th annual Philburg Festival and the 66th annual Nautical Days. From the Philburg Festival, we have Shirley, Lauren, Linda Thomas, Councillor Maureen Swift, who work with the Philburg Lodge Society. And just a sincere thank you for what a fantastic musical and artisan event that was in that beautiful park. So thank you so much to those involved in the 40th annual Philburg. As far as Nautical Days, that was also a really fun 3 days. That's our family free family fun festival. And I know Councillors Haslett and Councillors Kerr put a lot of work in with the organizer, Dave Stevenson. Thank you so much for the emceeing, for the coordination, bringing back some of those really fun events that were new, as well as really traditional events that have happened. So thank you so much to our parks, our fire, all the departments that were involved. It was really all hands on deck to make sure that that kind of 4-day festival weekend went so beautifully. So thank you so much to every one of you that was involved. It was a really fun and busy weekend, and I know we're all still recovering from all the activities every day. So now we get a warm council meeting to keep us awake. So if I can get a motion to approve the agenda for August 7th, 2024. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. So we have 3 delegations this evening. I will just call each delegation up, and you'll have approximately 10 minutes, followed by council questions, if any, after. And the first delegation this evening, I'd like to formally welcome the new Comox Valley RCMP Inspector, Scott Mercer, up to give us our first quarter report and just do a quick introduction as our new RCMP inspector to the area. So welcome up, Inspector Mercer. And on the mic, you just have to press the button until it turns red. And you will be good to go when you're ready. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council, for inviting me here this evening. Appreciate you turning off the air conditioning for me. That's hot enough saying from this mic. I had the privilege and honor of meeting some of you over the Nautical Days. And can everyone hear me back there? Am I speaking loudly? Okay. The invite was there, and I was going to come anyway. I was going to insert myself at Nautical Days because I think events like that are important for the community, and it's important for there to be a police presence there as well. Not just myself, but other officers. A brief introduction about myself. Don't hold it against me, but I'm from Alberta. I came here. I spent my entire service in Alberta. And I hail from a background of general duty contract policing, as well as serious crimes. I policed large and small municipalities and have been in drug units, organized crime units, crime reduction units. And recently I was with the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, in which our mandate is to provide oversight of all police agencies in the province of Alberta. So maintaining public confidence in both public safety and our ability to police these municipalities is very near and dear to my heart, and something that I hope to carry over, especially when it comes to the accountability and my leadership role at the detachment. I've only been here for about a month. I'm very impressed with the detachment that I've inherited from my predecessor. It's very unique in the sense that most detachments that I've worked in, general duty members are usually of a certain experience level where they have 5 or less years service. We have what I would call almost a pen of unicorns, in the sense that we have a lot of people with extensive policing backgrounds, with extensive years of service. And to me, that's a good thing, but it also presents a series of challenges as well in terms of entrenchment and introducing a new culture of change. I'm not going to stand up here and make grand promises or anything like that, but my hope and intent is to learn as much about this area and my detachment and personnel, what makes me tick, what we can do better for the communities. I'm a firm believer in policing. I'm sure that's a term that's been used often by my predecessors or by other police officers. It's something that I firmly believe in my nearly 20 years of experience. I've chosen to serve in smaller communities, and it's the reason because I grew up following my father, who was also a police officer, professional, what we call a tidbit, in the sense that he was a police officer and grandfather was a police officer. So I know the value of being in small communities and the role that police departments can play. And I'm hoping to reflect those same qualities on my detachment members as well, and ensure that there is a renewed police visibility, both in the town of Comox as well as the Comox Valley Regional District as well. I can go over the first quarter report if you like. I can just maybe mention some of the takeaways from it. It's been provided to you ahead of time.
Just some highlights. The highlights would be
Yeah,
great.
just the highlights. What I was touch base on. So we saw a slight drop in this first quarter, in which we went from 638 calls for service last year to approximately 621 calls for service for this first quarter. And the first quarter is from March up until the end of June. This thing I have a number of public members of the public that are here behind. Most common types of calls for service for Comox were traffic related incidences. So speeding offenses, impaired driving, those type of offenses that are typically called into the caption are the main or majority types of calls that we're receiving that we're responding to this area. We did see an increase in humanitarian calls for service, and both I would categorize as check well-being, missing persons, or calls involving emotionally disturbed persons. We did see an increase in missing persons in this quarter, and we're relating that to a youth group home that's within the area. Most common call locations was the group home, as well as the marina, followed by major roadways that travel to Fort East. For violent crimes, we saw a slight decrease, but the most common type of violent crime that was called in were assaults. We did see an uptick in sexual assaults, which I thought was odd. And I'm going to dig deeper into that because it showed a 200% decrease in it. But when you compare the numbers from, say, two sexual assaults that were reported last year by this time to 6, that's still a large number, but one that I'm going to try and find what the drivers were. It may just be that people were reporting more than they did in the previous year. Focus of these violent crime calls were mostly in the downtown area and West Coast. For property crime, we saw that the most common call for service was in district, but there had been a slight decrease of about 6%. Those are basically the main takeaways from that report. I would be more than happy to answer any questions that this council guys would have.
Thank you very much. Just have a quick question, noticing some of those mental health calls, suicide, unfortunately, health and wellness checks. Is it something that you follow up and share those stats with some of the mental health organizations like Boundary, Comox Valley, and different groups, or is it mostly just the council to get that information? How closely are you working with some of those nonprofit societies?
Well, some of the nonprofits, and I would have to lean on my client services to find out what sort of community consulting groups have been established prior to me getting them. I feel that it's important to know those groups. Partner with them. Since landing here, I've had several conversations, one which we're branching out to introduce early intervention to high-risk prisoners that we have in our cell block, as opposed to just putting them through the medical system and hoping that they get the help that if we're seeing early indicators or they're stressing or harm themselves or they have a history of it, that we can maybe introduce them into an environment where they're already in our custody. That way we can not push them in the right direction, but provide a support service that they might be able to do that they might not do on their own. I'm hoping, again, once I learn a better layout of the area and support services, that I myself will be able to act as a liaison to see how we can create new community initiatives and programs that I might be able to provide some insight and share information of. So I'm very open to that.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Mayor and then Councillor Blacklock.
Thank you. I originally was going to ask you about sex offenses, so I do look forward to hearing if you have any insights about that. But I have a question that kind of builds on what Mayor Midians was asking. We have a really great regional emergency management service that includes cooling services and increasing health checks during heat waves and heat events. I'm just trying to understand how that interplays with your health checks. And it might be a bit too early to ask, but I'm curious if you, if that's influencing your numbers of health checks or how you work together on that.
I would be none of the idea that didn't impact our check well-beings, because just this past week where we saw an increase in temperatures, I noticed when I'm doing the review of our call logs, the number, and it's categorized as check well-beings, had gone up from previous weeks. Now, there may be other variables that may contribute to it, but knowing from my experience working in smaller communities, especially on First Nations and stuff like that, that we tend to see a higher calls for service to check on, say, elderly or people that have disabilities as such that may not have access to cooling services. So, in short answer, yes, I do believe that it's probably an influence factor. Whether I can say for certain it's not, it's something that I'm keeping a watch for.
Thank you. Councillor Blacklock.
Yes, thank you, Inspector Mercer, for joining us, and welcome to the Comox Valley. One of the most consistent complaints we hear as a council are from youth in our community, often up to mischief, but down here at Marina Park or up at the mall. I'm just wondering if you have any experience or ideas around engaging high school age youth in sort of responsible civic behavior, and whether you would recommend any sort of school visitation programs, or is there anything like that in your repertoire that you can do? So
as far as we do have a de facto school resource liaison that with our department. As far as what she's doing to get involved with the schools, that's going to take some learning on my behalf. Again, I know it's a default excuse to say I'm new to this doctor, but a lot of this is finding out what has been done, what's currently being done. My personal experience with youth programs, I was involved with me for 2 years. So I helped develop initiatives, especially when it came to positive campaigns, reaching out to youth, getting involved with Boys and Girls Club, having positive influence, especially when we're dealing with high-risk youth. I'm curious about the youth group homes here. To me, it seems to be an issue as far as that I'm trying to wrap my head around is where the Ministry of Children sit on it as far as the rules and authorities that they have within the group home, what experiences we're having, whether they're all negative in police officer, and how we may be able to change that. That's again something that I'm hoping to dig down into, and like maybe liaising or talking with partners, they might be able to tell me better as far as what they've identified as broader issues involved with their youth. I know you spoke to about like the marina and there's some hijinks that's happening there that's causing people to call in. I was receptive to that when I first got here, because one of my first efforts I made was to do some patrols, and that not just during the days, but at nights, on weekends. I got to go out and play, be away from my computer for a little bit, because I wanted to get see the need for policing after hours. I had people flagging down and say it's got to see here. There's some issues going on with over at the marina. There's some issues going over at the park, and I was able to go. I then communicated that back down to my walkers to say let's not commit that time. Let's not avoid having to go out and do patrols and that. So it's going to be a culture change within my department. It's something that I look more heavily as far as visibility in the community, and it doesn't have to be negative visibility. It can also be positive visibility. And I'm hoping to develop that.
Thank you, Councillor Blackhawk. Councillor Grant.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming. It's good to hear that you're going to have a review and look at what happens, because typically in our community, we phone in and then we get told, well, there isn't a lot of crime because people have learned not to phone in because we don't get much action on those calls. So, I mean, we've got a letter on our agenda tonight about Marina Park. It's just around the corner where the kids get in the trees at 4 o'clock and start smoking and worry about it catching on fire and swearing and all of that goes on. Right? So it would be really nice to be able to have a patrol that's somewhat regular that can go through those things and just have a presence in our community. I mean, we pay for a lot of officers, and I don't know that we get great value, and I don't think that's your fault or the RCMP's fault locally. I think it's a problem with the contract and the police act itself and the way it gets brought down to communities like ours, where we seem to pay, but we don't get what we want, and yet somebody else is getting the service. So I get all that, but it's hard on our community with our budgets to be able to keep up with that. And then when we hear, well, our police officer, we've got this new squad they want, where's that money coming from? So, I'd really love to have a more fulsome conversation with you about that and just really get to the bottom of how we can make some changes to that and make it better. But I mean, in the meantime, just having a presence in our community and just small patrols through the parks and up to the mall and some of those places where we do get problems from time to time, and they're not big problems. It's graffiti, kids, and it's not anything major. But it would be great to be able to be on top of that a little bit more. So I'm glad to hear you're onto that. I look forward to seeing how that comes out.
Well, thank you. And I never really described the belief system that because you guys paid it formally with the formal speak. I believe that every community deserves the same competence and resources that can provide. I do, again, I've had this conversation with Cumberland, I've had this conversation before yourself, in the sense that I want to renew for these people's opinions that the police are here at visible. That starts from the top down, from myself and down, and they're waiting to do it because I think it's part of their job for service for you.
Looks like that's all the questions. So I just want to again extend thanks for coming and introducing yourself to our council. Was going to summarize a little bit of just some of those concerns around the speeding around. I know personally, and from those close in my circle, that when calls were made, they weren't attended to because they were considered minor. The challenge being they were all in home office, and then gets that collective feeling of not being able to call. So that's something that could just be looked at with the challenge of resource management that you have in front of you. So thank you again for coming, and we look forward to hosting you future and seeing you at the event. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And you're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to take off to the much needed work this evening. I'm now going to invite Norman, and I won't pronounce the love, to discuss the 1966 Guthrie Road, which is the overview of the proposed 6-story rental apartment and retail project at Highland Village at 1966 Guthrie Road. So we'll just give you a moment to set up at the stand in your presentation, and then we'll have your 10 minutes. Okay, we're ready to get started, so welcome, Norman. Sorry, I just need you to have the mic turned on. Good.
All right, there we go. Or sometimes. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. It's a pleasure being here. My name is Norman Labe. I'm the owner's representative and development manager for Aptar Properties, who is the owner of 1966 Guthrie Road in Comox. Here with me is Marcus, our development coordinator, who's going to work the computer. As well, we have representatives of the ownership group, including CEO of Aptar Properties, Stein, who's in the back here. I'm very quickly, a little bit about myself. I was born and raised on Vancouver Island. I've been doing projects here for the last 25 years, from Victoria to Campbell River to Port Alberni. So very familiar with the island. It's a great place, and hope our project is able to allow more people to have good homes here on the island. I'm here to provide an overview of our proposal to develop the Highland Village Residences, a new 6-story building consisting of rental apartments, retail, and amenity spaces. The residences will be built on a subdivided portion of the Highland Village Commercial Plaza, which is currently a piece of vacant land. The project will fit seamlessly into the surrounding community and help provide a diverse mix of attainable housing for Comox. We are currently in the project's rezoning phase at first and second reading for council here tonight. Our goal is to complete the approvals by the end of 2024 to reach occupancy by mid-2027. Aptar Properties has owned commercial and residential properties on Vancouver Island for several decades. The company's goal is to provide new homes close to shops and services to help contribute to the housing shortage, to solving the housing shortage across British Columbia. Highland Village was developed as a commercial plaza in 2008, and Aptar Properties purchased the property in 2016. So wanted to give you a little bit of quick context about the neighborhood and where the site is. 1966 Guthrie is located at the northeast corner of Guthrie and Anderton, and it offers great bus service and bicycle and pedestrian paths. Our site is currently partially developed with Highland Village Retail Center with Shoppers Drug Mart, TD Bank, Subway, A&W, Medical Clinic, and others retailers. The vacant 2.5-acre portion of the site is where we are proposing to develop our new mixed-use building. The property is bordered by a farm to the north and east, and we are very sensitive to the interface with these agricultural lands, which we will discuss more in a moment. The area of Comox has diverse housing types and commercial services, including several mixed-use properties and 2 4-story projects completed in 2021 and 2022. We believe our project is in line with the character of the neighborhood. Highland Village Residences will be 5 levels of rental apartments above ground level retail units, plus 1 level of underground car parking with 30% of the stalls ready for electric vehicles. The building will comprise 205 rental apartments and 9 retail units. The rental apartments will have a mix of units and sizes for all ages and family types. There will be 36 studios, 110 1-bedrooms, 39 2-bedrooms, 9 3-bedrooms, and 11 ground loft level units. Apartments will vary in size from 350 square feet studios up to 1,200 square foot 3-bedroom units. Each unit will have an outdoor balcony or patio to maximize access to fresh air and sunlight. There will be accessible apartments with wider doorways for wheelchairs and safety grab bars and plumbing fixtures and cabinetry suitable for persons with disabilities. We have made a point of making the building friendly for bicycle riders and are providing 125 bicycle parking spaces at the ground level. Our bike center at street level will have a repair and maintenance area plus outlets to charge e-bikes. Car parking for residents will be underground with 178 stalls, 30% having EV-ready outlets. Surface parking will be provided for visitors and for retail customers. Handicap parking stalls will be located on both the surface lot and underground. Special attention was paid to our interface with the agricultural lands on the site's north and east borders. These are lands that are within the Comox Valley Regional District. We included a generous 50-foot buffer on these 2 sides that would be planted with native shrubs, trees, and grasses. On the north side of the property, we have designed a large outdoor amenity space with ample natural light for residents, and there's also a large rooftop patio on the building's second floor. Our landscape plan includes native plant choices and specific stormwater management to mitigate any potential impact on the adjacent agricultural land. The building is designed to the BC Building Code Step 3 energy guidelines, a very high standard of energy efficiency and sustainability. We will minimize the use of fossil fuels through a low carbon design of heating and cooling systems. Each apartment will be serviced by a dedicated heat recovery ventilator, HRV unit, that provides constant filtered fresh air to the unit. This creates a cooling effect in the summer and pre-warming in the winter for energy efficiency and resident comfort. So we did a lot of research before deciding to pursue this project, because we could have just done more retail on the location, but it's a goal of the company to develop and provide housing, rental housing in particular. So we did a lot of research into the housing needs for the region. Just recently, the CVRD's 2024 housing needs report noted that vacancy levels are still around 1% in the CVRD. Comox has a housing shortage last year of 250 units, and the broader CVRD 700 units. And by 2028, the CVRD is estimating that it will have a housing shortage of 4,355 units. 3 kilometers away from our site is Canadian Forces Base 19 Wing, which employs 1,000 Canadian Forces members and 200 civilians. From speaking to CFB management, we learned that their employees are in constant shortage of rental housing. And so they are very excited about our project coming to fruition. We are also only 3.5 kilometers away from the North Island College, which has over 430 students, with no current student housing specifically provided for those students. We spoke to a student advisor at the college, and they provided 3 very interesting quotes. Number 1, you could fill an entire building with students alone. Number 2, it's brutal, the rental housing market in the Coquitlam Valley. And number 3, if there was a cupboard available, students would rent it. So they're finding it's very challenged. That's why we have a significant component of studio units, because we know that students will be attracted to them and the price point. We also did some analysis of what the economic impact of our project will be in the region. Using the Statistics Canada modeling, we were able to project that the potential economic impact of the Highland Village resident project will be over $100 million in the Comox Valley, resulting in a $42 million impact to gross domestic product, $24 million of wages and salaries, and 220 person years of employment. It's a very significant impact. In addition, once built, property tax revenue from the project will be generating over $220,000 a year to Comox. For our project to work, we need to get financing through Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, and they have specific programs for rental apartment projects. And one of the things that they require is that we, as the developer, are able to show a certain return when we net out costs from revenues, and that has to show a 15% profit to cost ratio. And it's one measure to show that the project is safe, that when you develop it, it's not going to lose money. It's going to provide a return which allows you to repay the mortgage. We have been working on this project for 4 years and have optimized all aspects of the design to maximize what the site can offer to the community within the realistic constraints of construction costs and financing. At this point, we are just very cognizant that if we're required to add additional costs to the scope, or construction costs go up significantly, financing, I know it's starting to temper, but it still hasn't come down in any significant form, that it would be a challenge for the project to be financially feasible. The project is currently in the rezoning phase at first and second reading before council. Our next step, with your support, is to host a public hearing in early September, then advance the third and fourth readings with a target of submitting the building permit application by the end of the year. The building permit application date is very important to us because you're probably aware of this, but in March of 2025, the BC Building Code is being changed significantly with respect to seismic requirements and accessibility requirements, both that change the design of buildings like ours significantly, meaning it would need a much more robust foundation system, and 100% of the units will have to be accessible, which changes the ability to provide the amount of housing that we're talking about. Pending the approvals, we would begin construction in mid-2025, and it takes approximately 24 months to build, leading to an occupancy date in mid-2027. In summary, we are proposing 205 rental apartments and 9 new retail units to provide much-needed housing in a sustainable mixed-use setting close to employment, shopping, and transportation. We're asking for your support to help us advance this project and support the town of homeless. Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Norman. We'll have questions now. Councillor Haslett.
Thank you very much. How did you guys come up with the breakdown of the unit types? Was there certain demographics that were targeted more than others?
Yeah, it's a combination of reviewing the type of units that are in the town already. For instance, recently what High Street and Broad Street, the kind of mix that they utilized. We spoke to them to see what they found to be the most successful unit types. We looked further afield into Comox. Comox, for instance, just has brought, Courtney's just brought a building about 35 units, I think, of just studio units onto play. And we benchmark that against what we find works in other communities as well, and trying to come up with a mix that we think will accommodate the broad demographics.
Thank you. And then one more question here. You said you have 30% electric stalls. The additional stalls, would they be pre-plumbed for easy access in the event that more than 30% required on site, or?
Yeah, very much so. I drive an EV car myself, so I know how that works. If we don't want to overspend initially when the building is first developed, we find in other rental buildings that we're involved in, actually very few renters have EVs just because the price point is still higher. Hopefully that will be changing as more and more comes onto the marketplace and the value of used EVs come down. But yes, we're planning to put 30% of the stalls to be ready to have a plug that somebody can plug into, and we'll have the ability to add EV outlets, plug outlets as required.
Perfect.
Councillor Mayer.
Thank you so much. Hi. I am the liaison with the Good Policy Council. So I was hoping that you would just share a little bit more about the gardening space that you have allocated. And I wanted to double check. I really appreciate the rooftop garden idea too, from a connection and belonging perspective. There's been lots of studies done on multifamily dwellings, and those community spaces are actually really important. The community gardens fit that need, but they also help with food security. So I just love to hear a little bit more about if you made any adjustments to that since receiving feedback, or if that has remained about the same.
Marcus, can you follow up the landscape slide? Not possible. I know the landscape architect and the architect work together to take your comments into account. I'm trying to remember what exactly that they how they adjusted it. And so we have the plot of land that is on the ground level on the west side of the building, and then we have that rooftop deck as well. And I mean, that's certainly something we can push further to have more, if there's a desire to have more on-site food growing. We certainly look at that.
Awesome, thank you. I really appreciate I think you expanded the buffer since your original kind of drawing. So very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr, and then Councillor Blacklock.
Norman, thanks so much for coming, and thanks so much for bringing this project to us. A lot of our meetings, we ask a question: how can we put housing on top of that, whatever it is that is? And instead of just building another, single story strip mall, you're putting 5 stories of housing above. So thank you for bringing that. And the rental housing is a huge need in Comox. So thank you for addressing that. A quick question just about the energy efficiency slide you had. Some of the builders have come to us and said, you know what, we're just going to go all electric. Electric heating, electric appliances, and avoid gas hookups. Just wondering, for GHG emissions and also for cost savings, wondering if we're considering doing that with this project.
We've considered it, and I know I'm working on a project in the district of North Vancouver, and that's a requirement that it's all electric. The city of Vancouver had that requirement and just went back on it. And from an overall sort of disaster security perspective, having 2 sources of energy is actually not a bad thing. I know over time the goal is to phase out natural gas as well, but it's potential. Part of the challenge we found in other municipalities, BC Hydro actually often doesn't have the capacity to have the building go fully electric and provide the amount of EV charging that many communities are asking for. And it's a balancing act. So having some flexibility to still allow in the near term some natural gas, hot water boiler, that sort of thing is we think a safer way to go and a smarter way to go. Yeah.
Councillor Blacklock.
Thanks for joining us and thanks for introducing us to the project. I can speak just, from things I'm hearing in the community, and I have a few questions that perhaps you can answer. I understand the building's still in, preliminary design phase, and we're still pre-rezoning here. But can you tell me the max height of the building from grade at 6 stories? Like, how high is this?
It is roughly 24 meters is specifically for
24 meters.
Yeah,
and no overruns.
Okay.
yes.
And then there's going to be 205 units, and yet I just want to make sure I've got the parking right. At 178 stalls, does that 178 stalls include these the accessibility stalls and the EV stalls? So the 178 stalls total for 205 units?
No, the 178 are for the residents.
Okay.
And they're in the underground part.
Okay, so then commercial stalls will be on top.
Yes.
How many on certain stalls will be?
They're on. Sorry, I don't have that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just know because in the community, we saw a 4-story apartment be built on Anderton mid-block. And I've noticed over the time that a lot of the residents from the Anderton apartment building, due to a lack of or a charge for parking in their parking lot, park across the street in what is currently an underutilized former pub parking lot. And I'm concerned that if you get in a situation where we don't have enough parking stalls for the number of vehicles that the residents own, that they're going to start parking across the street and perhaps a commercial or the new commercial liquor store, or they're going to park across the street at the new community church, or worse, parking on any of the residential side streets. So how are you going to charge rental residents for parking? Like, how are you going to deter every single resident from bringing a car to this building?
Well, number one is we're very much focused on taking advantage of the fact of the great bus service and the bike lanes that are there. And we've gone what we believe is above and beyond for the amount of parking, bicycle parking spots, indoor, secured, at grade, not down in the parkade, with a bike repair area, bike wash, EV charging for the bicycles as well.
Okay.
And so we're trying to make that a priority, and tenants will be very, very aware of that option. Because we also manage the retail plaza, we're very sensitive to the things you're speaking of. And the reality is we would love to go another level of parking underneath, but the rental is not feasible for the next level of parking. Several $1 million of construction costs to go another level.
And this isn't a question as much as I just want to make sure you have the full current picture of the rental market here right now. And you had mentioned North Island College as perhaps a source of tenants for you. But I want to make sure you're aware that under construction at North Island College right now is a 217 unit building. It will be done by mid 2025. So when you're looking at future demand for your rental stalls and hoping, for the parking stalls, and you're hoping that, hey, college kids are going to take some of these units, and a lot of them don't have vehicles and will commute by bike or bus to North Island College. Just remember that there will be at least 200 plus of them that will be housed on campus starting next year. So just make sure
Thank you for that.
you're dialed that one. No more questions.
Thank you, Councillor Swift.
Thank you and welcome. We've been waiting to see this project go ahead for some time now, so this is exciting in lots of ways. Looking at the 178 spaces for parking though, that's still going to leave you short about 27, isn't that for the residents?
If everybody has a car, yes.
Yeah.
It is, but we're securing that additional parking shortfall onto the retail plaza, which we also want. And we're putting a covenant in place that after hours, that residents of the apartment buildings will be able to park. If they don't have a stall in the parkade, they'll be able to park in the retail plaza.
I have two other questions. I'm just wondering, with so many rental units, do you have an on-site manager?
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
you do. Okay.
Yeah.
And have you ever contemplated a car share program?
We've thought about it. We're doing a car share with Moto in Vancouver on another project. If there's a desire and they want to be part of it, we certainly discuss that with them. And the car share programs do their own evaluation of a location, and there have to be enough residents in the area, and one building alone typically isn't enough. And there's a lot, I guess, where Highview's Aspen project is, but that might be that's too far away. Like if we had a car at our location, they had it on at their location. But over time, that will be a desire.
And just one last question. Do you have any idea what the rents would be? What would the range of rents?
Well, they will be what they will be at the time we rent it out when it's built. Today, Marcus, you've been doing some research on what the current market is for the newer buildings. So if you times that times the area of the unit, that gives you the monthly rental rate, and that's what people are paying today. And
Just a question around the affordable housing waiver that's in the current plan for around the 700,000. That's a policy we kind of went over for a couple of years, 2001 to 2023. So outside of the 15% kind of profit from CMHC, is there any other rationale that you can kind of provide before we make some initial discussion later this evening on that?
yeah, well, our experience in other municipalities is that if you're providing 100% rental, generally the municipality doesn't ask for a contribution towards affordable housing. They're very grateful that you're doing a secured 1% rental building. And most developers, unless they bought their land at an incredibly low rate, the project is as rental isn't feasible with the current construction costs and financing costs. If you have to provide some affordable as well. For instance, if we had to pay the $700,000, that would add, $3,500 per unit extra capital cost, and which would have to be translated into additional rent. So it would force us to push the rents higher, and at some point the market won't pay higher rents, and that's a big risk for us. And CMHC, as our lender, will say, developers don't always like to talk about profit and stuff like that. But the reality is you have to show on paper the lender that you have a profit margin in there, or they won't finance it. So that's the challenge. And so for us, with the way the construction costs have been going, the way the financing costs have been, and we were really working hard with staff to see if there's ways we could share the existing sanitary pump station with the existing facility, the new facility. The long and short of it, we went back and forth a lot with town engineering and tried to come up with the best solution. But the compromise solution in the end was that they really wanted, because have to subdivide, and we have to subdivide because CMHC can't be financing the retail plaza. So it has to be a discrete parcel of land. And anyway, long and short of that discussion and back and forth with our civil engineers and town engineering was that we do have to provide a separate sanitary pump station, separate water service, everything separate to the building, even though we were prepared to share it between. But anyways, that's been decided. But that resulted in that's costing us probably close to $750,000 that loan. That wasn't in our pro forma to start with. So it's those kind of things. We're just very sensitive, and it's just so tough to make rental work. And I know a lot of people in other municipalities say, well, charging $1,700 for a one bedroom, that's not affordable. But it is, if you want, unless there's government subsidies coming, the product won't get built. So that's why we're asking you to consider if there's a way we can eliminate or reduce that.
Yeah, lots of different inputs to consider and always changing. Councillor Kerr?
Yeah, just following up, speaking of government subsidies, have you maybe approached BC Housing to see if they had any programs where you could get funding through BC Housing and therefore keep a percentage of your units, 10%, 20% of the units truly affordable, like on BC housing rates, affordable housing rates? That would be, capital for your project, but also provide benefit to the residents that housing would be affordable. Truly.
Yeah, we've reached out to them on not only in this project, and a number of projects, and they don't seem to be offering that for a portion of a building. They'll work with a not-for-profit on a whole building, and they will provide capital funding and then ongoing operating dollars to make it what would be called a deep discount rental rate. Yeah, but they're not doing it for a portion of units in a market building. So it'd be great if they did.
That looks like all the questions from around the table. So we'll be coming to this later on in the agenda, likely in about an hour. Hard to say when, but thank you so much for the presentation and answering all of our questions. Thank you. So we'll invite up Chris Fields to go over the Economic Development and Downtown Action Plan presentation with us. And we'll just give you a minute there to set up. Chris, welcome. It's a great presentation, by the way. Yep.
I'm on. First of all, apologies for font errors. I use different fonts than you do. We'll get over that. So Normally I have a little flourish and a little artistry to this stuff. I've got 10 minutes, so it's gonna feel like a whirlwind. In front of you, you have, after many months, an economic development strategy. As you will recall, there is a sister to the economic development strategy, the Downtown Enhancement Action Plan, that was part of the same process. It is under a separate document and is referred to in the strategy in front of you. I'm just going to fill out a bit of nuance and context for you as you consider what to do and where to go next. So
I don't know to interrupt, but please do take 20 minutes or whatever you need.
Okay,
for the presentation.
I'll rush. I'll rush. There we go. Okay. Where do we begin with an economic development strategy? Well, it sits within your own strategic plan. So I'm a big fan of following through with things that you've committed to. Economic health is one area of interest to you, and you've specified areas of focus: downtown vitality, Comox Marina. So for example, you see heavy emphasis within the strategy on either placemaking or infrastructure investment initiatives that are downtown and marina focused. Survey work indicated those are highly important pieces of infrastructure to the residents of Comox. You could ask yourself, why should I bother with economic development? That's a fair question for anybody to ask when you're considering funding a service or pursuing projects. Please don't read the fine print. This is just to say that whether it's economic, physical, or social, environmental, economy is part of an integration of how communities function. So there's an economic development component and job creation, but we're also mindful that in a balanced world that we live in, you also must reflect on broader community development. The two go together. They can't be distinct from each other. They both feed off of each other and create a sum that's greater than the parts. Your planning horizon currently is 25,000 acres, so roughly double where you are today. So any context for which you are having discussion, commercial land or industrial land or density or the boundary that you have, is all influenced by a number that is almost double you today. That kind of has to move you off of certain perspective that we are what we are today and nothing will change. You will change. What is strategy? So some key words here. It is focus. You have a world of choice. And the key to successful strategies is agreeing to do things together. Is it everything? No, you can't possibly resource everything. So while you do community engagement, is to try and take a filter, like a big kind of open filter, listen to the community and drill down to what do the people most support in terms of doing and taking action that's helpful to your community. Prioritized, even within a strategy, honestly, you have no hope of doing absolutely everything within the strategy. And I guarantee you can't plan out the next 5 years of actions because you don't know what next year looks like even. So in context, it lays out kind of a stepping stones and a guidepost to follow, where I want you to focus your most intention on, or intention is in two key areas: a vision statement, which is in that plan in front of you. All the rest of the world can change, but if most of you, 80%, agree to the 80% of the gist of something, there's no consensus in this world, but agree to a goal line, it helps you say yes to things and it helps you say no to things most strategically. The second key area that I want you to think about, whether you agree to them or not, you don't want this, or yes, we generally are okay with this, is the goal page. And there are 7 of those that are in there. Do not get caught up in the weeds of 7.1.4. Those are tactics. It's rubber hits the road and weeds. When you turn this over to economic development folks, a BIA or others who are implementing this kind of work, they come back to you annually through your budgeting process and your strategic process and your council today and your next council post 2026. And in a world of change, that agenda should have some nuance and change as well, reflecting the fact that nothing ever stays the same 2 days in a row. So, and resource is the third key word. This strategy without any people power to do anything is a bunch of fluff. And so if you want to have things happen, we must have people or organizations that that are able to support us. We can only get so much out of volunteers, and we can only get out so much out of collaboration that is volunteer based. Ambition is the other really key word in here. And I know it is when you engage with communities, there's always a segment of community that is very fearful of change. And I totally get that. The pace of change is monumental, and that is scary to people. But the other reality is if you just kind of put a wall around you and hope that nothing will change, that's not going to happen either. The world will pass you by. We still all care about the taxation that we pay. We care about the assets and the amenities that we have. You're a corporation running a collective investment in things that you need to recapitalize and move forward with. So the word ambition is all through here as a way of seeing a connect the dots vision of the future and a pathway that helps you get there that is highly influenced by a community engagement process. This is your strategy. I'm just a dorky consultant. My role is to interpret what we hear from people with just a little bit of subject matter expertise. So in total, 820 people have had input, whether it's workshopping or marina specific meetings or community survey work. There is a balancing act in all this, and hence you see so much emphasis in things like downtown or marina in another community that is much more, let's say, investment attraction focused. The language and the content of this is different. So think of it as a seesaw. Yes, you want to create jobs at the end of the day, but as we started out with in our discussion, right out of the gate, you have very unique infrastructure assets that are highly prized and valued even by those who invest in places, your marina, your airports, including Harbor Air, your downtown. Those are very significant appreciated assets. And so that's the community development flavor in all this that balances out. There's a wrong circle due to font. I circled the word clarity here. If you are a leader of everything and anything is possible, clarity is helpful. And so I know in economic development world or any planning world and any plans that you do, it can seem really daunting when you have thousands of choices in front of you. But clarity is a really important word. But the other key word is you won't all agree to absolutely everything that you are doing. Leadership is a bit of a leap of faith in some senses. It's getting in a boat and rowing together. And really innovative and creative communities mess up once in a while along the way. The key actually is you have a plan in front of you, but plans are paper. Plans are ultimately most effective when they're about people who agree to do things together. And so clarity lies here in this plan. Oh my gosh, there's some nice font. So let's begin here in terms of what you see in front of you. Consider it a story. Someone asks you who is Comox and why does it matter? This is important not only to residents, but also those seeking to build projects in your community or those seeking to create jobs or entrepreneurs or residents who want to relocate due to lifestyle reasons or tourists who may visit. This is and I'm going to give you a bit of cheat here. ChatGPT is a wonderful tool in some senses. So in taking an open-ended question, what's your vision for the future of Comox, with 540 people responding, I had to dump it into ChatGPT 3 times to say, give me a semblance of a 250-word vision statement for Comox. And I am fastidious with this stuff. I'm shocked how good the output was. Need a little bit of massaging. But what I'm saying here is that tool is particularly effective at being a reflection back of keywords that people are mentioning over and over and over again. Vision statement. You have to agree. Don't mess too much with individual words, but this is an important thing to agree with the gist of. Oh my gosh. Please no one write about how awful this stuff look due to fonts. Three key challenges addressed. Downtown. You have downtown 1.0. Downtown 2.0, people are wanting a set of visible and tangible next steps for your downtown. Clearly, there was a discussion in the strategy making process about better integration with the marina and the waterfront. They are pieces of a whole. They work together. Currently, there's disconnect. There's certainly opportunity with the waterfront marina. There's an extensive number of tactics in there that address that. So addressing the two of those together in visible and tangible actions. Non-residential development, you need to double your non-residential assessment ratio. Recall, we've had a long discussion this year about half of the current region average. We've talked a lot about doubling to 7.6%. What that does, though, it's just simply numbers, but what it does, bottom line, is creates the ability to pay for services and amenities, enables you to help close your infrastructure reinvestment gap, whatever our words are that we got caught up the last time this year, but that's what that is. You need non-residential development to help pay your bills. And so the where of that and the how of that becomes really, really important in the context of 25,000 people, not your today. So even today, you don't have industrial land for expansion and you are kind of at your max with commercial land. So you can go up or you can go out. Those are your options. And then the doing part of economic development in terms of organizing the people and groups that help make you happen. The core strategy is built around core elements of that, simplifying and unifying direction, again, from a world of choice. Communicating strategic intent. So obviously talking to residents and remembering that investment is 80% local. Your best success in economic development comes from convincing people that are here that the community is awesome, worth reinvesting in, worth long-term commitment, and worth commitment in tangible things like new business growth, entrepreneurship, etc. So our storytelling and our clarity and our focus pays off dividends when we are clear with the community about what we are wanting to do. We're simplifying our language to help us do that. Delivering resource economic development service to community investment interests and focusing on outcomes initiatives that have the best return on investment in pursuit of an ambitious future. So think about 1,000 options in front of you that in the prioritizing. I'm going to show you a little bit of implementation planning as you move forward, considering what do we do next, your choice at the end of the day. But you have to think about, and I loved words that a former mayor in Canal Flats always used, visible and tangible. One of the real dangers of economic development or any plan making work is we do all this and it shelf sits because people can't see things. And so this balancing act between short-term, concrete, visible, and tangible actions while also addressing very complicated subject matter like how do we get more industrial land or what is our municipal land strategy? Well, those pay off over successive councils, not immediately. So you must kind of have a visible, tangible component of what you're doing as well. And so here are the 7 goals. And so you can see 4 of these very strongly focused on your infrastructure value proposition. Even investment likes these, but you have to continue to reinvest in them. And then the wheels below are how we kind of hold that together by nurturing from below. So entrepreneur ecosystem, 18% of your workforce is self-employed. Small business growth will be the key to the success of your downtown. You can see how those are kind of welded together. An economy expanded. What kinds of economic activities have strength now, and what kinds of economic activities should we focus on in the future becomes key. And then operationalizing economic development. This matters because at the end of the day, if I'm an investor or someone considering relocating to a community or a visitor, they all speak different languages. And knowing what makes you different or distinct is very helpful in making choices about your actions that help step into your value proposition. So the defense industry, for example, has a little bit of a manufacturing sector that is attached to it. You can step into that. Your infrastructure is mostly the focus of your current. Just to show you, because it says it in a lot of words, but just to show you that we didn't just pick what kinds of economic activity in future are important to you. We didn't pick them out of the air. They're informed by evidence at the end of the day. And so whether it's food and beverage with a Comox Valley employment gains that are like the rest of BC, or retail and accommodation food services, one of your biggest sectors, etc., this set of activity is present in your community, and this strategy by choice is choosing to step into further development of those. We'll skip these. I'm just taking time. Okay, and then at the end of the day, it's really important to always be talking to the community about what does success look like. I'm a big fan of measuring in quantitative terms. Quality of life means nothing. Measure quality of life. And so this is an economic language. I've talked about land and I've talked about assessment ratio. If you move the needles on those, there are a number of cascading benefits that you would see. So these are really root numbers that if they move, it is success versus not success. I'm going to show you something just super simply because you are about to enter into, you have a new planning manager, director, I don't know what you call that position. You are about to review your OCP. So you may think some things are really weedy, like planning policy, but let me show you how important policy can be. So Comox and Sydney, I consider to have an extremely elevated quality of experience in its downtown. There's a lot of similarities to Comox. Has about the same industrial acreage as Comox. Has similar commercial acreage to Comox in the red dots on your map. What happens when I look at the assessment per acre in Sydney versus Comox? The gap is if you were behaving like Sydney today, you would have an extra $7.1 million or 17% of your budget. Based on what? Planning policy that is infill, density, and permission based. It's as simple as that. And it translates to very significant numbers. With 17% in your budget, help you pay for amenities and services and things that people want? The answer is yes. Reinvest in your infrastructure? Sure. So I'm going to end here with implementation. So the other real failure of plans is we spend a lot of effort creating them. We get to them to the goal line, we all take a pause because we feel like that's the end, and it's not. It's the beginning. We just got to the start line with this. The key is to do things. And as a 30+ year veteran of this world of economic development, the biggest frustration I have is watching stuff shelf sit. So what do next steps potentially look like? Because a lot of you, and I do it too, I looked at your strategy saying, now what? Looking up in the mountains seems really daunting and scary. People get paralyzed by that, too many things to do. Chew off the doable. So here's where I'm going to end. And, you'll have access to this as you move into your strategic planning and your budgeting processes. But we broke this out into kind of 4 quadrants. And so you can't do anything if you haven't organized your team to play team economic development. So for the remainder of 2024, 3 key steps. Establish a tourism commission by bylaw. Many BC communities do it. It's the first fundamental gateway to organizing around tourism development. It's about 5% of your workforce, but it is a growing activity in BC. Step 2, establish a multi-year VRE service agreement with Comox BIA. You currently work that through the Regional Chamber of Commerce. My agreement would be, this is a sum greater than the parts. These 3 steps working together on your local economic development strategy. The communication across these is a sum greater than the parts. You have a BIA here, and they have capability to do that. Step 3, establish an economic development service bylaw with contracted support. I'm not saying just leap in and do everything permanent. Create your 2-year agreements, test the waters, figure things out. It's a new path forward. You stepped away from a region-based system. We're in fresh territory. Experiment a bit with this. Contracted service gives you the most flexibility. And so what would that economic development service do? They would manage those pieces on the right, and they would also do things like marketing, and they would also do things like stepping into sector development, all those little visuals I mentioned to you. That's 2020. And again, this is just like putting something on a wall for you to consider. You may have completely different ideas, and that's totally fine. That's the whole point of this, is it's messy. The things on the right are a selection of tangible, visible, small ball, but bigger picture as well. And so that placemaking piece, and these are projects, there's 18 projects, if you read through the marina and the downtown work, that were identified through the engagement process. We've distilled this down into a total of 8 across downtown enhancement projects and placemaking. Ultimately, you will have to come to agreement. And so we've about whether to do anything and what to do. We've tried to look at, smaller budgets, things that are doable without great dollar values. Or this will also force or encourage a discussion on things like grant funding, let you know what you're going to be doing. And then the two pieces, the piece below, the non-residential land piece, remember my Sydney observation, how urgent that is, because whether you are doing infill or permissions, the numbers won't change on a dime. Most of your industrial commercial land has been developed already. If you consider things like annexation pathways, they take a very long time to accomplish. So the best time to do those kinds of things that fundamentally influence your finances is yesterday. And so that is the big ball that people won't see balanced against the small ball. So I'm going to leave it there. That was a bit of a whirlwind tour through economic development and context for you. Any more questions?
I just want to say thank you for organizing it in such a way that it was 9 big moves, the 3 implementations, that the biggest key indicators was very helpful to follow along. So thank you for that. Do you know, did Sydney do that industrial land kind of development in the recent years, or is that something that they did? Like
No,
many decades
if
ago?
you drive in, it's on the left side and it's well established.
So as mentioned, we'll be doing a half-day deep dive into our budget to really put some price tag items and prioritize. So that's coming up in early September. But today's the opportunity to ask you questions about the presentation. The implementation slide there last is the only one I didn't recognize. Did you mention that will come after for that session?
Yeah.
Perfect. Questions from council? Chris. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks for the presentation. I'd love to nerd out over that comparison with Sydney. So
Yeah,
for sure, provide that to us. That'd be great. My question's about goal 6.
Yes.
And so that's the economy expanded. So I see what the community asked for in the top tier and the mid-tier industries. I'm wondering, is there data on, like, for dollars spent, what would actually add the most to the economy? It's not necessarily what the public wants, but what would actually make the most sense from evidence base. For example, if we spent money or effort or time on creating a tech hub, or people that could live in Comox, enjoy our beautiful area, but work for Microsoft or another company around the world, is there some way that we could? That's just an example. So what industries would give us the most bang for our buck, and how would we go about recruiting those? Thanks.
First answer to that is on the industry side. So as a matter of sector development, the first thing you do is you don't ignore things that are already strengths in your community and already present. There's a reason that they are here, is because they perceive or see actual value proposition. So the first thing you don't do is invent sectors that don't exist. That's the first thing you do. At your kind of level of detail, what is the return on investment of a tech hub? Or look, when you get into classes of estimating for infrastructure projects, that's the same kind of funnel process you're working towards as you're budgeting, you're estimating, you're comparing, you're selecting best return on your time and dollars. I'm going to default again to my friend ChatGPT these days, because I recall our last conversation, you asked about placemaking. And I said, I'll give you some evidence for that. There's a couple of references in there. It is an outstanding tool for doing that next level exploration of, okay, give me evidence of where these things have worked. And you can literally ask for financial detailing, and it will give that back to you. So comparison of success stories or best practices from other places is something that we do a lot of. It is a next level question, down from where we currently are with strategy. It's a fantastic question.
Other questions from council while we have this? Thank you so much for the presentation. It's again coming up later on our agenda, but there'll be no decisions made this evening. Thank you so much. So moving along on page 15 of the agenda, we're looking to move adoption of the Wednesday, July 10th, 2024 regular council meeting
Move.
minutes.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on that regular council meeting for July 10th? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We have on page 21, the public hearing meeting minutes for July 10th, 2024 to be adopted.
Move.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the meeting minutes from the public hearing held on Wednesday, July 10th? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. There's no council committee meeting minutes and reports. On page 40, we have items 1 through 14 on the consent agenda. If I can get a motion to approve those or to receive all 14. That's moved and seconded. And all those in favor of receipt? Opposed? That passes unanimously. So we'll now move on. If there are any individual items to be pulled out, we will just need a mover and a seconder for each item. Are there any items that would like to be pulled from the Councillor Haslett?
Number 11.
So number 11, we have Daryl Tompkins for our vandalism and security in Marina Park. To get a seconded, and go ahead, Councillor Haslett.
Perfect. Just in reading that, Karen from Inspector Mercer this afternoon, I think it's really great that we're going to start to see a little bit more active involvement from the RCMP at later hours of the evening. It's something that we've seen more and more coming up onto our consent agenda where people are upset about either vandalism or whatever it may be. So I'm really looking forward to having the inspector come back in quarter 2 or quarter 3 and really let us know how this shifting targets and how he's changing the way the attachment operates. Excellent.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on number 11 or other items to be pulled from the agenda? Councillor Kerr.
Number 6.
Second.
So that's from Sue Campbell on the request for bylaw amendment regarding noise. Go ahead, Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So that's a letter also signed by 18 residents downtown about a noise issue one evening. It kind of sounds from the letter, it might have been a wedding or some kind of a party that went into the evening. Just wondering, maybe a question for staff about what our noise bylaw is for downtown, and what residents could do if they're faced with a similar situation. You know, if it's still loud at 2 a.m, what can they do? Do they call the police? Do they call bylaw? What's the recourse for residents? Thanks.
Thanks for the question. I'll just go through CAO Wall over to Corporate Officer Russell. Thank you.
Yeah, so the noise bylaw is basically, it's pretty general, and it states all areas of town that nobody shall make any noise that causes undue disruption to residents, people in the town. After hours, it is challenging. Residents' only recourse is to call the RCMP.
Or use the online reporting tool. Maybe not as much with noise. Councillor Grant. I believe we're done with that letter and we can pull a new letter. Do you mind just using your mic there?
Number 13.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull this out. I know Trish is in the audience tonight, and I think this has been a bit of an ongoing issue. And of course, one of the real problems here is that it borders closely on KFN land, so that becomes another issue. But my question is there anything that we can do to maybe help with this situation a little bit? It seems to be getting worse and worse as time goes on, and I'm not really sure what we can do, but is there anything we can do?
I'll possibly go through staff. I know that from a multi kind of the different regions, as well as KFN has been trying to work with aggressive dogs in general and see where that falls, whether it's with bylaw, whether it's with the SPCA, et cetera. And I know that's still kind of an ongoing working group of who's willing to actually take that on and manage it, because it's happening in all 4 regions, including the Royal District and Comox First Nation. So I can't update on that political piece tonight, but I can definitely bring an update to council at our next leadership meeting when it comes up. It's one of the 4 or 5 main items that are coming up the last 3 months, I would say. I'm not sure if staff can make any comments on when it comes to specific animal complaints, whether it's aggressive dogs or wildlife farm animals running free, if there's anything from a town of Comox when it's close to our town borders.
So, yeah, this is an interesting one because if I understand correctly, the dog in question is from KFN lands and not town lands. So certainly better communication, cooperation between administration will help with bylaw enforcement. For this particular case, as also mentioned, we are working together to come up with better strategies in the animal control in general across all.
So does that mean that KFN is aware of this? I mean, that's one thing. If they're not aware of it, we should probably be aware that there's an issue.
Agreed.
So have we done, are they aware of this, or should we make them aware, or?
They are aware of it.
And absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We can definitely update that there's been new communications that are recent and pass along that that's an ongoing issue that has not resolved itself. So elevate to what we are able to. Other questions on or comments on number 13? Other items from council to be pulled out? Councillor Kerr.
Number 5.
Okay, so number 5 is from Craig Freeman on the relocation request for Shakeside's MacLean property. Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, just a question. And first of all, just thanks to park staff. They're doing a lot of work down in that area and rehabilitating some of the trails. So that's excellent. And I also had a chance to sit at lunch on Monday after the parade with John Nielsen, president of Brooklyn Watershed Society. And we chatted about all the great work, and hopefully we're going to see another flood of salmon come upstream this fall. But as it relates to nearby Shakeside, just wondering, A, what the status is of our current plans for that area, and if we have some timelines, and B, is this a feasible request for those online? This is a request from the Merville Heritage Society to maybe move the building to their site, as they are collectors of old buildings and such. So is this even feasible? Can this be worked into our plans? Thanks.
Thank you. We are, as far as the moving forward to construction of the viewing platform, we're still waiting on permitting from the archaeology branch. And until we get that permitting, we're not able to move forward. And no, staff doesn't think this is going to be viable. One, getting it out over the bridge, we're concerned about the load that it would need to be carried. And on top of that, for us to go through this, it would require further consultation with the Attorney General's office and potentially going back to change the order once again.
So just a quick follow-up. So that, can we maybe relay that info to the Merville group? Just that, thanks for the offer, but it's not going to work. It's awesome. Thanks.
Is there any motion that's required to relay that? That'll be in follow-up letter. Thank you very much. I'd just like to pull out number 4 from the Tanya Brookhaven parking issues.
Second.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to recognize attendance to the meeting tonight and waiting for this item to come up. I'd be happy to talk offline in regards to parking bylaws that involve multiple societies. It's more of a conversation that we can have after the meeting. So I'll follow up with you directly on that, recognizing that we received the letter and we will have an in-person conversation on that. Any other items from the consent agenda? Okay, we're moving on to page 69. We have 2077 Hector Road and 941 Road, RZOCP 23-2, PR 24-9, post public hearing report. There are 4 items there for our review. We're going to do each of them one at a time. I'm just going to double check if there was any staff. There's no staff presentation on this to confirm, correct? Okay, so we're going to go item 1. I just want to quickly read out which each of these is in Canada layman's terms, so we keep track of which item we're on. So number 1 is deleting section 2.1 regarding Schedule A, Part 2, Objectives and Policies, section 2.113 Residential Policies. And what this is changing it to allow a maximum of 4 stories on all land designated as residential, low-rise apartments, townhouses, and ground-oriented infill, with the exception of some slope sites such as 1700 Balmoral. So that is A. B, we are deleting the text and a new east-west neighborhood trail from section 2.2D, which is what we came up with at the June 5th, 2024 meeting. C and D are correcting a small typo in Schedule 4 and Schedule 5. And number E, we're replacing Schedule 2 with Schedule 2 as attached on 5 to do with the August 7th staff report from Planner 2 titled 2077 Hector Road and 941 Aspen Road. So I'll get a motion for number 1.
Move.
That's been moved and seconded. And any questions on 1, which includes A through F? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. So we're now moving on to part 2, and that's the Comox Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1850.46 be amended at second reading. And there's some deletions of text there, as well as renumbering accordingly once some of those deletions A through E have been changed. Are there any questions? Sorry, we'll get a motion for part 2. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on A through F of part 2? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We're now moving on to part 3, which is A and B. That's Comox Subdivision and Development Servicing Amendment Bylaw 1261.18 be amended at second reading by deleting subsection 21F and figure C-4 and renumbering accordingly. And that is, thank you, that's been moved and seconded. Just to clarify, that is that we are changing the requirement for the public east-west trail through 2077 Hector Road from the list of outstanding items when giving the subdivision bylaw first and second reading. Any questions or comments on part 3A and B? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. We're now on page 69 of 2077 Hector Road and 941 Aspen Road, RZOCP 23-2 and PR 24-9. Post public hearing report. There's the number 4, that's Schedule 1, outstanding item 3C of the planning report, RZOCP 23-2 and PR 24-9, be replaced with the following text. If I can get a motion for that. That's been moved and seconded. Any questions on number 4? Didn't have my head up when I was. We'll go Councillor Mayor, Councillor Blacklock, Councillor Kerr, please. Councillor Mayor first.
Thank you. Yeah, I was curious. It's a question, I guess, for staff. I didn't understand why the 15 meters was in there when a wetland management plan was being recommended, because presumably the buffers could change with a management plan. So I just wanted to better understand why 15 meters is in there as a buffer.
Over to CAO Wall.
I'll ask Elliot Sternbull to reply.
The management plan is purely focused on recommending practices to protect the wetland during construction and land clearing. The 15-meter buffer is separate then that will stay regardless of what's in the management plan.
Counselor Blacklock.
No, I was just gonna ask for the same thing, clarification on the 15 meters. Is that a reduction or an increase compared to the first time we presented this? And I believe that it is, you know, holding steady at 15 meters. That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Kerr.
It's good. I'm glad we're all confused by the same piece. Page 77, the part that I'm still a little unclear on is the provincial government's no disturbance buffer zone of 30 meters is suggested, but we're doing 15, and I'm just trying to understand why. What's the why 15 instead of 30?
Over to COO.
Thank you. The town is moving forward with the recommended buffer that has been suggested by the environmental RP bios that have done the work and submitted the report. The recommendations by the province could be adopted by council, but we at the staff level have made the choice to move forward with the 15 meters buffer using the professional reliance model going through construction of the area.
Other questions from council? Councilor Mayor.
Thank you. Two follow-up questions. I'm just curious, there was some confusion about whether the correct guidance was being followed by the RP Bio. I'm just wondering if that was verified.
So we do not internally have the ability or the expertise to make comments on the professional reports that are submitted to us, especially in this area, as we don't have that type of speciality within our organization. I think council can see in the report, I believe, in your alternative recommendations, or if not, we could help construct an alternative recommendation that the town seeks an independent review of the work that has been submitted. The town seeks an independent report to be created, or alternatively, council could direct that we move forward with the 30-meter buffers as per the provincial government guidelines. What we have done at a staff level, which we do not just in this area, but in the vast majority when we're looking at areas, when we're looking at the developments, is that we require the studies to be done. We require certain parameters to be included in the studies, and then we accept the results that come back using the professional reliance model. Again, because municipalities simply don't have the breadth of expertise to be able to be making the decisions on this. So at a staff level, we are continuing with the professional reliance model in this area. And if council would like to have that reviewed, seek additional reports, or in your rezoning powers require separate amounts of buffers, this is something that we can do.
Thank you. Somewhat related, but somewhat tangential to this, we had previous conversation about an additional, I can't remember, I think it's a hydrologist for Brooklyn Creek. And I didn't notice that mentioned anywhere in here. So I just wanted to double check that that was also still in the plans.
Yes, and that's not in relation to this area. That is in relation to the discharge coming from the stormwater. And yes, there will be hydrologist work and review, and we've been working closely with the Brooklyn Creek Watershed Society to develop a shared understanding of what's required.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for council on the 15-meter natural buffer around the wetland? Councilor Kerr.
Well, just for clarity for the vote, I'll be voting against this. I think, if I have a choice between a, province mandate of 30 meters or a consultant's report, which was paid for by the developer, I think to me the weight would be on the provincial standards. So I'd be voting against this in favor of provincial standards.
Councilor Blacklock.
I assume then, Councillor Curry, you'll also be submitting the RP Bios report to the professional association that deals in professional conduct with RP Bio. Because that's
Councillor Blacklock, we need to speak through the chair, not other councillors.
through the
please.
chair.
Through the chair.
I think that's the incorrect approach, and I'll be voting in favor of the development 15-meter buffer.
Thank you. Just a reminder to please speak through the chair, and there is no comments from the gallery. Thank you. I will be voting against the 15-meter as I think it's premature with some of the information on the infrastructure and the sewage, water, all of the infrastructure required for the area. And I think there's some more information that as counselors who don't know a lot of the RP Bio background, that having two kind of different reports makes it very challenging to pass at this time when we're waiting for that other information still. So I hope there's a better solution at a later date. CEO Wall.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to provide clarity, Council. The motion that you have on the floor in front of you is to require that there's a qualified environmental professional that is involved in the land clearing process to ensure that the wetland is protected as land clearing and construction takes place. So that's the motion that you have in front of you. And Council, it sounds more like you're debating whether or not 15 meters is appropriate or how you want to move forward. I'd maybe suggest talking about whether or not you want to include the requirement for the qualified professional to be a part of this, which, by the way, is something supported by the developer. They're okay with this recommendation, and then maybe move on to seeking a separate motion around what you want to do on the 15-meter buffer.
Just to get clarification. So there's the two separate items. This ensures that there is an RP Bio on site during the clearing. And the second item would be how much the buffer is.
A qualified environmental professional, which may include a
So staff recommendation is to separate those into two separate motions.
Yes, I would maybe deal with the motion that you have on the table now, and then someone could make a motion on where you want to go on the 15-meter buffer.
Okay, or an amending motion can be made. I think the challenge is because the 15 meters is in there, so if people want a different number and we vote on that, they're kind of two separate.
Yeah, it's two separate issues. If you can give me just a minute, because I want to make sure when we're making a change to this area that it carries through to the other parts of the bylaw as well. So if I could just have maybe a minute to consider your question.
Sure. We'll just take a quick 5-minute break and then we'll return once we have clarification on the way to manage. For the essence of time, we'll keep going. Thank you. So we're on page 69. We had a process question for if we thought a different meterage on that paragraph should be done, what the best process to approach that would be. So over to CAO Wall just for some clarification on what this actual clause is and the timing, and then the best waiver process.
Thank you. So in the bylaws right now, there's the requirement for the provision of the 15-meter buffer. If council were to defeat the motion on the table, the requirement for the 15-meter buffer would remain, and what would be lost is the requirement for a qualified environmental professional to be involved in the land clearing and construction. So that's what this amendment is about. Now, having said that, this is the area, this is the part of the bylaw where we are setting out the requirement for the 15-meter buffer. If council has in mind or a different size of buffer, what you may do is introduce an amending motion to this amending motion to change that 15 to whatever you see fit. Alternatively, if council wants to request additional analysis on the 15-meter buffer, you would pass what you have here, introduce a new motion, and add an additional requirement to the outstanding items. So one more time, council, if you have in mind a specific size of buffer that you wish to be included, you can make an amendment to this motion. If you wish to require an additional report or additional analysis, I would suggest that you pass the motion as is, and then add another item to the outstanding items list for whatever report or analysis you wish to see.
Thanks for that clarification. I believe the motion is on the floor and we're still at questions. So Councillor Mayor.
Thank you. It's just an overall process question. If there are any outstanding issues, is this the opportunity to bring them forward, or is there another opportunity? And I also just want to clarify, like, this isn't, anything that we do here isn't approving this development yet, right? Like, that's not, I just would like a description of where we're at in the process.
Thank you. So the staff is not recommending that we move forward to third reading. So there's still a number of steps to get through before this project is approved. Right now, as noted in the staff report, we are not recommending moving forward to third reading until we're able to understand the sanitary servicing of the site a little bit better. I would say that now council would be the time to discuss any of the items that were brought up in the public hearing that you wish to address and see changed. You will have another opportunity to do that because this report will come back to you in the future in order to move forward to third reading. But I would say if there are issues that you know about now, it would make sense to start to deal with them now rather than to wait and bring them up in the future. Because at that point, it's just going to delay the process even further.
Just trying to understand also the process of timing to see, well, if we're not sure of what some of those servicing requirements looks like in the actual footprints of the buildings, whether they'll be smaller or bigger based on that servicing, is there an opportunity to not establish that meterage at this time, so that if it turns out that there's not a service area of, let's say, 1,100 homes or whatever doors that it's supposed to be, and that meterage can be made to a 30-meter or whatever that number would be, what is the time press for having this established now, outside of course, ensuring that environmental professional is there?
The sanitary servicing is very, very unlikely to have an impact on the size of the buffer of the wet. If that was the question. The questions regarding servicing are more what areas can be serviced initially and how long it is until the regional district is able to do the required upgrades to service the entire properties. So I would say that the two issues are not.
Okay, and just a question for clarification. We're specifically talking about the meter around the wetland, two wetlands on those properties, not the meterage around the full property, not the what backs onto Hector and Aspen. We're talking about specific wetland here.
You're talking specifically about the wetland on the High Street property.
It's not both properties. High Street only. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Other questions, Councillor Grant?
Yeah, so in reading this, I'm struggling a little bit because we have an RP bio report here from a professional that says 15 meters is the amount. Now, what I don't know is if we change this to something different, what effect does that have on the development? It could be catastrophic. It might be nothing. Unless we know that, I can't tell you whether we should be changing it or not. Although I do look and go, we have a professional RP bios report that says that 15 meters is sufficient. So it would be nice if the developers were here or if we had spoken to them about this so we could get a little bit better information on this. I would hate to change this and then see it have a really negative effect on the development. On the other hand, I get why the neighbors want to see this maybe a little bit larger. So I think we have insufficient information to be able to move forward with this personally.
Question from Councillor Mayer, and then we may go over to CAO Wall just to look at the timing one more time on this and what some possible solutions may be. Councillor Mayer.
Yeah, I actually agree with Councillor Grant. Like it's more just about the confidence in that rather than trying to recommend having non-professional bios recommending a different kind of buffer. For me, it's about feeling confident, and that's really okay to do that even when you have professionals. Sometimes you get a second opinion. So I would welcome some suggestions from staff about what would be a reasonable way to gain more confidence in the buffer.
Over to CAO Wall, and also just recognizing that we do want to ensure that a qualified environmental professional is on site when this is decided. So I'm not sure how we weigh those two items at this time.
So maybe I'll address Mayor Minion's comment first. I would say that council, you can adopt the change in the bylaw to ensure that you have a qualified environmental professional involved in the project. And then if you wish to have an additional staff report brought back on the 15-meter buffer versus the 30-meter buffer, what those recommendations are, that is something that you could request staff do, and we would bring that report back to you, and you could make a decision at that point what you want to do on the buffer.
So just to clarify, if we look at the motion as it is, remove the provision of 15 meters and add a sentence at the end to say staff to bring back a report about the 15 to 30 meter option or options. There may be 2 or 3 options there. At a future council meeting, that would accommodate having a qualified environmental professional on site, but still leave that part open. And it wouldn't be able to go ahead at 15 meters until that's determined.
Correct. So because we're not moving this forward to third reading, you will be making the change for the qualified environmental professional. 15 meters will remain, but the bylaws are not moving forward. So you will have the opportunity to make the change at a future date.
And because it's still at second reading, they would not be able to go ahead on the 15 meters that are in the bylaws that are there currently.
Correct. They don't have permission to move forward on development at all. They don't have any zoning. And in order for them to move forward, they'll need to meet the conditions that you set forth in the bylaws that you're passing now and the outstanding items.
Clarification, I can make a motion shortly. Councillor Haslett.
Just to confirm, in the event that we get a staff report, will that include reaching out to developers and determining what these impact will be on their project? Obviously, we've come a long, long way. Housing is a really important thing in the town of Comox right now. And like this Councillor Grant said, it's 5 meters killed project. Is 30 meters okay? I just really like to hear from them as well as how close to line.
Yes, we'll include their response back to any potential change in the buffer size.
Okay, so I'll just put a motion on the table that the paragraph there, the long-term protection of the environmental areas. It's not made as a motion, Councillor Grant.
I believe I made the motion and Chris seconded.
Sure. Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. So would someone like to make an amending motion? Or we can vote on the motion, defeat it, and bring it back. Correct. Okay. Okay, so we are voting on the motion that's on the floor, which is as it's stated in the report currently. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. And if there is now a follow-up motion. Councillor Kerr.
I'll take a stab at one unless CEO Hall wants to beat me to it, but maybe motion to ask for a staff report to look at 15-meter versus 30-meter buffer, including potential impacts to the projects and an independent RP bio assessment. That's the motion.
Okay, it's on.
So before we do that, we've kind of locked ourselves into the 15 or 30, and it could be 17, it might be 25. We don't know what that number is. So I think we might want to just clean up the language a little bit. So if, it could be as little as 15 and as high as something else. Not exactly sure how to say that, but
I'd say bring back multiple options between 15 and 30 meters, if that's likely the
20
range.
would be the number.
Before it's seconded, I'll take a suggestion from CEO Wall.
Council, I think the motion as read out by Councillor Kerr is okay. What you're saying is that you want to see the analysis of why one person is recommending 15, why one person is recommending 30. And what I take the RP bio comments, the independent RP bio report to mean is what would be involved in the process of going out and getting another review, because there's two ways that could happen. One is you go out and you get a full other report done, and I suspect that in fact that would be a significant amount of time because they would have to start from the beginning, and I believe you have to go through entire seasons of management. The second would be to get someone to come in and do a professional review of the report and get something back that way. So what I would take this motion to mean is I will come back with a report explaining to council why there was a recommendation for 15 meters, what the recommendation for 30 meters from the province means and represents, why there's a difference between the two, and what does it look like to get a third party involved to help provide some clarity to council. And then again, to also seek the input from the developers on the potential impacts. So that's a long way of saying that I think that the motion that's been read out by Councillor Kerr is sufficient to answer your questions.
Thank you, CEO Wall. Is that efficient for you, Councillor Kerr? Okay, so that's been moved. Has that motion been seconded? It's been seconded by Councillor Grant. So questions or comments on the motion from Councillor Kerr?
Yes, thank you. I missed the last point on the motion.
There's just a piece around the implications of an RP bio, independent RP bio assessment or review. Yeah.
Thank you. Questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed?
I'll just abstain. Okay.
All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That motion passes. So we're moving on to page 195, the permissive tax exemption policy, CCL 025.01. There's a recommendation from Chief Administration Officer that permissive tax exemption policy CCL-025 be adopted as amended to include section 6.05, which states any property that engages in behavior which council deems to be abhorrent, is that correctly? Egregious or criminal may be ineligible for future permissive tax exemptions for a set period of time. That has been moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Hazlitt. Any questions or comments about the policy that is included in the agenda today? Councillor Sweat.
Thank you. When we talked about this before, I thought we were going to rely on the criminal code for guidance because I'm struggling a little bit with it. We're abhorrent and egregious simply because we all have different levels of tolerance. And I would hate to put us in the position of having to make those kinds of decisions. So my hope was that the criminal code was going to be our guiding document in this.
Over to CAO Walker.
Yeah, thank you. And that's certainly where council could make the decision. The reason I wanted to provide this language was in the last meeting when I told council was if this was to come up and you had this happen, you would be able to just amend your policy or make the decision at that time to remove the property. And I believe that that still remains, but you have some level of uncertainty if you were challenged that it wasn't within your policy. And so what you would be doing is relying on the courts to take a common sense approach to this and say, well, listen, this is clearly offside behavior, and council can make the decision to remove or not grant the permissive tax exemption. This provides a little bit more surety in saying that there is a process. The people who received the permissive tax exemption were aware of it. And I would say it makes it less open to challenge. We're really, I believe, getting into a very small portion of this policy. As I stated in the report, I don't know if you will ever get to see the actions where someone's going to trigger this. But to your point, it does leave the interpretation of abhorrent, egregious, or criminal in the interpretation of council. They would be making those decisions. And what you're saying and what council could do by defeating this is leave it to the courts to decide. So something may happen, that property or the people involved in the property may get charged, and then you'd be waiting until, that criminal trial were to play out before you remove the permissive tax exemption, or you would change the policy at that time and sort of rely on the common sense approach from the courts. So, sorry, I see confused stare all around.
No, I guess what I was wanting was maybe some clarification on what abhorrent and egregious means. So, that's where I'm stumbling. I mean, I don't.
From dictionary.com.
Yeah, I know.
Councillor Black.
But I mean, basically, I don't have any problem with it. I agree that we should have some tools. But I just don't want to be putting a marketplace, nor do I want this to have to go through the court system to be settled.
Did you want any clarification from staff on that or more commentary around some of the concerns about what would it look like in the future? CAO Wall would like to comment.
Inserting this in will provide you more surety that you're able to make the decision if that time were to come. But it also increases the chances that you're called to make a decision on something you don't feel is abhorrent or egregious. So it provides more surety in processing, but opens you up to more risk that you're going to have to deal with this more often in maybe instances that you don't feel are warranted.
Grant.
Yeah, so I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. This doesn't take us off the hook in any way, but in my 21 years on council, never have we even come close to anything that would even remotely get near to abhorrent or egregious. I think what happens with tax exemptions is you have some discussions such as the Legion where they've converted to a pub rather than so much of a Legion. And that's the kind of thing that you might talk about as a permissive tax exemption. But we've never even come near this. I think we're really everything, to be honest with you.
I think it needed a bit of a healthy check and review and some language in there that if something did come up, we said we had that review recently to say if it's criminal or whatever council may deem as that. But I really think that's probably not something we're going to be looking at, but it's there as a safety net for us to have discussion if needed. So I'm supportive of the policy and grateful that we've taken a couple looks at it as stated in the motion. Other questions or comments before we vote on the permissive tax exemption policy CCL 025.01? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. So there is no special reports, no bylaw adoptions. Under new business, we have the planning report for 1966 Guthrie Road, phase 3 for first and second reading for Comox OCP Amendment Bylaw 1685.10 and Comox Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1850.43. And we do have a staff presentation on this evening from Robin. I'll just encourage, while Robin's getting set up, there is the 278-page planning report to go with this presentation. And on page 5, you will see a summary. It's called 2.2 Key Issues. That's a really helpful page to go over what some of the big key decision points are. So when you're listening to the presentation, feel free to head to page 5 of that second agenda. Welcome, Robin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Robin Powell. I'm a planner with the town of Comox. I'm here to present to you an overview of proposed development at 1966 Guthrie Road and its associated development applications. Mr. Laube has already gone over some of the overview with you already, so I will breeze through some of those aspects. So the development site is on the east end of the subject property, which is vacant at the moment. The proposed building would have commercial units on the ground floor and 5 stories of residential units above for 6 stories total. The dwelling units would be secured as rental only through the zone. The projected tax revenue for this project is not reflected directly in the staff report, but it's concluded based on data provided in section 524. So the subject property is located at on the town boundary and the urban edge. It's adjacent to ALR lands, as well as CBRD lands. There is an existing 15-meter ALR buffer along the north and east perimeter that has been secured through a restrictive covenant through previous development. It is located on the intersection of 2 arterials, that's Guthrie Road and Anderton Road, and no upgrades to the intersection are proposed or required through this application. The property is currently accessed from both Guthrie Road and Anderton, and no change is proposed. So this development was phased over the course of its development history since 2008. Phase 1 being Shoppers Drug Mart, phase 2 being the restaurants, bank, and the medical building. And phase 3 is the currently vacant area on the east end. Phase 3 was originally intended to be the final component of the shopping center, so which would be low-level commercial uses. But in the recent years, the owner decided to take a different approach, hence the OCP amendment. Also, as Mr. Laube had mentioned, that a subdivision is required due to funding criteria, and that is not yet approved, but there is an application that has been made. And that application is or will be approved by a staff approving officer rather than through council. So this slide goes over a bit of a roadmap of the applications. I have them in 2 separate categories, one being land use, the other being more design oriented. And then another pocket full of other aspects that council should put their mind to, consider, or otherwise deserve some additional attention. I have put subdivision in faded text there just to indicate that it is land use oriented, but it is a staff approval. So for today, for first and second reading of the bylaws, we are looking at the OCP amendment and the zoning amendment bylaw, which includes the rezoning. For the OCP amendment, the proposal is twofold. We have the amendment for the land use designation, going from neighborhood commercial to mixed use commercial residential, and amending the development permit area map. So changing the development permit area from commercial, neighborhood, and tourist to mixed use commercial residential. That's DPA 5 to DPA 4. The zoning amendment bylaw is likewise twofold. The main part of that is the rezoning, and that would be a new zone for lot 2. Actually, I should back up and just clarify that the OCP amendment is for lot 2 only, not for lot 1. My apologies. So the rezoning is for lot 2, the development site. It would be a comprehensive development zone with rental tenure zoning, which is something that Comox has not seen before in its zoning bylaw. So 100% of dwelling units would be secured as rental, And because it's through the zoning, it would require a rezoning before any of those dwelling units are used for non-residential purposes. There's going to be a new definition added to the zoning bylaw. And it's also noted that the applicant's initial proposal was for purpose-built. So in total, 205 rental dwelling units, 9 commercial units. And the building is proposed to be 6 stories and 24 meters from average grade. And you can find the copy of the zone on attachment 2, schedule 1. The other aspect of the zoning amendment is to allow a drive-through on lot 2. And the context for that is that the subject property currently allows drive-through through its zoning. And so if it was going to be redeveloped in accordance with its existing zoning, then the drive-through would be permitted through that zone. Now going on to the design aspect, which is not as critical at this point, which is through the land use amendment, there is a development permit that is required, DPA 4 as mentioned before, and that's for lot 2. Development permit is not needed for lot 1. DPA 4 essentially promotes quality, form, and character for the development, as well as water and energy conservation and the reduction of greenhouse gases, and provides a suite of design guidelines to provide a framework for creating those spaces and buildings. For the variances on lot 1, which is the shopping center, there are some parking variances that are required, and they are a result of the location of the proposed subdivision line. That subdivision line is located as such mainly for servicing reasons. And so there are some existing and proposed parking spaces that are too close to the lot line and require these variances, so because they don't conform to the parking setback and the parking screening that's required for the zoning bylaw. Now, looking at one of those key aspects, the ALR interface. So that's the interface between the urban development and the agricultural development on the ALR lands. And so there is a 15-meter ALR buffer, as mentioned already. Now, only part of that buffer has been maintained, and that is the portion that's behind phases 1 and 2. So it is proposed to be implemented fully across the entire site, or the north and east perimeter. And there are some changes that are proposed to the makeup of that ALR buffer, and that includes changes to the landscaping cross section. What you see in that cross section there is what is required currently through the ALR buffer covenant, and so what is proposed is also seen on the landscape plan. Also, a gravel pathway, benches, and bollard lighting is also proposed. A portion of the outdoor amenity area for tenants containing garden plots is located within the ALR buffer area, but remains 15 meters from the actual agricultural lands. Low split level fencing is proposed throughout the entire length of the buffer. That's to keep people out of the more critical masking portion of it. And there are some encroachments within the buffer, stairs on the north side at grade, and balconies on the upper rooms. A stormwater swale and underground infrastructure is proposed along the east side of the buffer, as well as a maintenance path right up on the property. A couple of other issues of note is just the general potential impact for noise, odors, and other impacts from the farmlands of potentially affecting tenants' commercial units, and inversely noise, litter, and other impacts from the proposed development to the farm operations. Now, I will stop here and point out this is the entire point of the ALR buffer, is to mitigate those interactions, those impacts. Also noted by staff is this potential conflict between the proposed plantings and the proposed underground stormwater infrastructure, and that will be worked out with the applicant in the future. And also would like to point out that restricting public access is a key component with fencing and gates, so it would be accessed only by residents of the building. Attachment 12 of the staff report provides you a comparison of how the proposed landscaping compares with the ALR buffer covenant, which is currently on title, as well as the zoning bylaw. Lastly, I would like to note that there are a couple of points along the main pedestrian access where they intersect with the drive-through lanes and a loading bay. And so staff will be working with the applicant to improve those interactions as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robin. Do you have time for a couple quick questions? Good questions. With the 40 parking spots, it's going from the first 2 phases. Those are current parking spots that are already there, correct? In the commercial?
Yes and no. There is also a garbage enclosure for the proposed building that's also proposed on lot 1. That will be taking a few parking spaces. So a few new parking spaces are also will be created on lot 1. So in aggregate, there will be actually 41 available surplus parking spaces on lot 1 that lot 2 would be able to take advantage of for their uses. And they're proposing it for a residential visitor parking space.
So those were surplus. And one more question, if that's okay, and then I'll get Councilor Grant. At first I heard the drive-through was kind of to include the A&W that's already there, but it does look like in the drawing there is a drive-through that will be in the 9 retail spaces. Is that
That's correct. It'll be integrated with the building and underneath the building in an open air area.
but that would be some sort of new commercial drive-through space that's being proposed there.
That is correct. Yeah, I can bring it back if
I hadn't seen that drawing yet, so I wasn't sure if it was the incorporation of the old one.
And the current zoning allows for drive-through on that property.
Yes, it is.
It's just a rumor that we don't allow them anymore, so just incorporating how that is with the culture.
It is, they are permitted in the C3.1 zone. The subject property is currently C3.1, and then it's proposed to be subdivided, and then the development parcel would be CD31.
Current three. Okay, Councillor, thank you very much. We have CAO Wall and then Councillor Grant.
So the current zoning allows for, I think it's the last place that a drive-through can come into Comox that's zoned is in this area. However, council, you're going through a major rezone, you have negotiation powers at this time.
Thank you for that. Councillor Grant and then Councillor Mayor.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering on the subdivision of this property, and I'm looking at the proponent is asking for the affordable housing to be waived, and yet because of the way this is laid out, it seems like we're making them for a separate pump than whatever else it was that they needed. It comes to almost the same amount. Is there any way we could rectify that so they could use one system and save that money? Because, you know, we need to get our affordable housing, but it seems like it's just a silly error or a silly way that CMHC is doing this. The other thing is I'm looking at it, it's hard for me to tell whether this is all one building or whether it's actually two buildings.
It's all one building.
It's all one.
All one building.
So we have one building, the subdivision, and we need two separate types of service to satisfy CMHC, is it?
Well, so the subdivision is required because of criteria for CMHC funding. There's a maximum amount of commercial ratio that is permitted, so that's why that is required. With the matter of the servicing and not being able to service through the current development or the existing development, I should say, the applicant was working with staff on that. It would have required a restrictive covenant for obliging the owner in the event that that lot 2 would be sold, that it would retain its or it would get its own servicing from Guthrie Road. And so I understand that the applicant was having difficulty with that, and so they decided to change strategy and went with taking it directly off of Guthrie.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
CAO Wall and then Councillor Mayor.
I'm just going to maybe pass back to Director Ashfield to talk a little bit about the servicing, but functionally, The reason for the separate servicing is, as was noted, the requirement to create the two different lots. Where it gets complicated, when one owner owns everything, everything's fine. But if the lots are separate and they get sold off, ensuring that those relationships stay strong and the infrastructure is used cooperatively in perpetuity forever starts to get a little more complicated.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking, that's why I asked if it was one or two buildings, because if it's one building, how are you gonna sell half of your building?
It's the phase 1 and 2 versus phase 3, I believe that's concern. Director Ashfield.
I'll just add on to what CEO Wall was mentioning. It's correct. Our subdivision bylaw states that whenever you're going to subdivide property, you need to have their own services for each lot. Again, for the complications, we would be willing, and again, as Robin was mentioning as well, working with the developer and their engineers to look at using that one lift station with a restrictive covenant to ensure we protect. It's a really big risk for the town. It's, you're not dealing with one single family unit, you're dealing with 207 units, high density apartment. And if you don't have ownership and, use of that lift station that's going to be sitting on existing lot 1, there's quite a bit of a risk there for the town. So hence the need that we wanted the restrictive covenant to have it, but CMHC would not accept putting a restrictive covenant on the site. Then we were working with the developer again and really trying to make this work and trying to carve out the new property line so that the existing sanitary lift station could sit on the proposed lot 2, so that the higher maintenance and risk would be with the development end of things as opposed to the commercial site. But I believe once their engineers were looking at that existing sanitary lift station, there was huge upgrades that needed to be done, because what it was sized for was that commercial, and with this rezoning, it's a substantially a bigger lift station that they were looking at. And then that's when the decision was that they were just going to keep it clean and come up with a second lift station. So that's where we're at with the servicing.
I was just trying to find a way that we could save them a bit of money and not have to worry about the affordable housing contribution, because I think that's an important contribution. But it looks like they looked at everything and can't figure it out.
Councillor Mayor and then Councillor Blacklock.
Yeah, I actually just want to continue on that thread. So we followed one path and kind of maybe met too many limitations. We still have, I think, a shared goal of seeing the rental housing and having the affordable housing contribution. So maybe a question back to staff: are there any other avenues that we can explore that will satisfy everybody? Or do you feel like you've exhausted all possible avenues?
Maybe I'll take that conversation offline with Director Ashfield. There might be a few more conversations that we can have. I know there were other options that haven't been spoken about here tonight that were being talked about. I don't know how far they are, and I also just want to be cognizant of not negotiating servicing agreements at this time. So maybe I can take that conversation offline.
Yep, that's great. Thank you. I did have some other questions. The drive-through kind of caught my eye too, because we're having conversations, so many conversations about increased traffic in that area, issues around parking. And on the one hand, I'm like, well, are we encouraging more traffic in the area with the drive-through, or is it actually better to have it a drive-through if there's limited parking? Which led me to wonder about traffic analysis and if that has already happened. And I apologize if it's in the 200 and I can't remember how many pages, and I didn't get to it, but just a little bit of comment about that would be helpful. And then I still have one more question after.
Thanks, Sir Mayor. We'll come back to your next question and we'll go around the room. Thank you. But Robin, if you had a comment.
Yes, thank you. The applicant did provide a traffic impact assessment, and that has been with the engineering department as well. That has been accepted, and
maybe we'll just let Director Ashfield make a comment on what you recall from the assessment.
Yeah, so the requirement from the town is with a DAI letter in regards to what the traffic impact assessment was going to be, would look like with the development. So what it looks like today without it currently, and what's the assessment of that traffic analysis with the development that happens. And from that report, which is done by a professional engineer, states that there's no upgrades that are required.
Just a little bit of a follow-up. Was there any analysis done on the level of service of the intersection pre and post development?
Yes, at both intersections or entrances, even the northern entrance to the commercial site as Shoppers, and then also the entrance at the.
Do you recall what the impact was? Are the intersections anticipated to continue to have the same level of service post development?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Blacklock.
Yeah, Robin, you may know the answer to this. I know that the CMHC financing of this project requires subdivision. We heard that earlier from the developer. Does the CMHC financing package also require the properties to remain fee simple tenure for 10 years before being strata title? Because it says in your package here that strata titles would be, future strata titles of the units would be subject to rezone. So is that in there because of the 10-year requirement to keep them as rental?
Over to staff.
No, sorry. Through the chair to Councillor Blacklock. This would be the requirement for the subdivision is for the maximum ratio of commercial space. However, can you repeat the question?
Just if the reason that you've got in your report, the planning report states that the strata titling would be subject to rezoning. And in my past experience, I've seen purpose-built rentals with CMHC funding packages or financing packages rather, switch after 10 years to strata and sale to residents. And I'm wondering if the reason you put that in your planning report was to prevent a potential strata titling of the property after 10 years.
Thank you. No, that's just through the nature of the rental tenure zone.
So then if the property were, say, constructed and sold to a real estate investment trust or another investor, would that, do you know if the CMHC financing would then be transferable or portable to the new buyer?
I am not aware of that.
But the rental zoning would remain because we're going to secure it through zoning. It's council. You heard earlier today. You heard the presentation that the affordable housing contribution versus rental as an amenity, and that's a discussion that council may want to have and seek further clarification from staff on. The developer has indicated that by going this route and getting the rental zoning, that it is seen as an amenity in and of itself in other communities. That may be something that we need to take a look into. I'm not familiar with that at this time. So I just wanted to make clear that that's something that we would need to take a look into further before we can provide you any sort of comment or analysis on the request.
Councillor Grant.
So I was gonna bring that up when you came around to me next was that exact thing. Can we, if we pass first and second reading, can we amend that at third reading? Or do we have to do it, or do we have to put this off until we figure that out?
The question would be whether or not the amenity package could be reduced after public hearing. And my understanding would be that the amenity package could be amended after public hearing because we're not changing the density. I look to planning colleagues to correct me, and nobody is yet. So I believe so. I believe we're safe in scheduling the public hearing. And if that's not the case, what we'll do is look to report back to council prior.
Okay, that would be good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to know what would require a new public hearing, because I have some questions around the drive-through, which is kind of a newer concept in the last couple of days and some of the smaller items, but without holding things up, it would be good to know what flags a new public hearing and what doesn't, because they're minor-ish potential items. So any other questions from staff from council to staff before we go through the 4 items on 1966 Guthrie Road? Okay, well, thank you very much, Robin. We'll be going through the items now. Thank you for your presentation and work on that. Any further questions for CAO Wall before we go through the items? So we have number 1, that Comox OCP Amendment Bylaw 1685.10 be given first reading. If I have a mover. It's been moved. Seconded by Councillor Hazzett. Questions or comments on first reading? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Number 2, that having considered the Town of Comox May 2020 Housing Needs Report in summary form, Comox Strathcona Waste Management 2012 Solid Waste Management Plan, and the impact on the current financial plan, Comox Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 1685.10 be given second reading.
Move.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. That Comox Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1850.43 be given first and second reading. If I can get a motion.
Move.
It's been moved, seconded. Any questions or comments on 1850.43 first and second reading? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And finally, number 4, that a public hearing in respect of Comox OCP Amendment Bylaw 1685.10 and Comox Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1850.43 be scheduled for September 4th, 2024 at 6 p.m. at the Stair House at 1801 Beaufort Avenue, that it include an online participation via Zoom, and that the Town of Comox publish the requisite notices as required by the Local Government Act. That's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the public hearing for September 4th at 6 p.m. at the Stair House in Comox? That's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you so much. So that will go through to public hearing after first and second reading now. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, and it's okay to also leave. You're totally up to you. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're now on page 202, Planning Report PR 24-10 to amend the building bylaw. And that is for 1472.14 to be given first, second, and third reading. And that's to bring our secondary suites and coach houses in line with the new provincial Bill 44. If I can get a motion.
I'll move that.
That's been moved, and a seconder. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on this building bylaw amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We're now on page 214, which is the 2023 Statement of Financial Information. That the 2023 Statement of Financial Information, SOFI report, as attached to the August 1st, 2024 report from the Director of Finance, be approved.
Move.
It's been moved, seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. And thank you very much to CO Wall and the Director of Finance and Lee for providing that report to us this year as required. We're now on page 254. We have the flag protocol and community events recognition policies. There's 2 parts there. Number 1, that the flag protocol policy CCL-058 be adopted as amended to incorporate the flag raising procedures from the community events recognition policy, and to add September 30th, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, to the protocol for flags flown at half-mast.
Move that.
It's been moved. Seconded. Any questions or comments on part 1 of that policy? Councillor Swift.
Sorry, I don't know if this is part of this. I think it's regarding number 2.
We can look at number 1 and then I'll get to number 2 shortly. Any questions or comments on part 1, Councillor Kerr?
Like Councillor Swift, I'm not sure if mine's part 1 or part 2, so I'll just ask it in case. So on page 255, we've removed previously proclamations, building light-ups, and here we're saying that flag raisings could be, decided upon by staff based on policy and criteria. Could we do the same thing with proclamations and building light-ups? Like, I know we don't want to be having a lot of decisions at council and tying up time in this busy chambers around this issue. Could we just apply that policy across all of these items?
I believe that could be a conversation, but I would say we would look at this for passing. And then if you had an additional motion, that would be nice to break out. The intent of this is slightly separate. So if you're okay with addressing this, and if you have an amending motion to add that, then that would definitely make sense to have a conversation about it. So it would be a 2A. Any other questions about the flag protocol policy? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Councillor Kerr, did you have a motion or discussion? Notice it might be a notice of motion.
Or do we want to vote on 2?
Vote on 2.
Well, I can move recommendation 2.
Sorry.
So that the discontinuation of the community events recognition policy CCL-059 be approved. That's been moved and seconded, and now further comments on that. Is that where you would like to have a discussion here?
Thanks, Mayor. You know what? Maybe best we chat after the meeting about it and see if we want to bring it back as a notice of motion. I like the way this is going, and now thinking back to our previous decision, maybe this could be incorporated in a similar way. So I fully like the way we're doing this. Just maybe we'll have some thought afterwards. Thanks.
I would appreciate that. It gets the mind going, but it's somewhat of a new thought at the end of a couple hours of deeper thoughts. Thank you. So we have the discontinuation of the community events policy CCL-059 be approved. I believe that's been moved and seconded. So we have Councillor Swift with a question.
Again, it may have should have come before, but it's on page 261, 5.02 C. It says, in the case of other persons, flags will be flown at half-mast from the date of the notice of death is received until sunset of the date of the funeral for that individual. And my question is, there's so many people not having funerals or celebrations of life, and they sometimes take place months and months after their passing. So I'm wondering if we can tidy up that language.
Good notification on that. CAO Wall.
Yeah, I think that is something that we should take a look at. I wonder, Council, if, given the sort of the number of questions, this is worth us taking a look at each board.
How long will that mean?
I think you just scheduled a public hearing, so just as long.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll vote on the motion, and if we defeat the motion, we'll not put it forward to a future meeting. Or would you rather
Defeat the motion and then refer it to the subsequent meeting.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor, and if we defeat the motion, we can refer it to the next meeting after that. So all those in favor of the discontinuation of community events recognition policy CCL-059, all those in favor?
I was supposed to say no. Sorry. Well, I can't open it. Just
Opposed?
no idea what this is about.
And that is unanimously defeated, and we need a motion to defer to the next meeting. I'll just make motion to refer that policy to a future September meeting or October.
I'll make that second.
Seconded. It can be September or October 2024 meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. So we're moving on to page 262, the Economic Development and Downtown Action Plan. And just a clarification for staff, we've had that presentation already, and our current plan is to do a workshop with council in an early September date to catch our 2025 budget. Is there any further discussion around that item outside of ensuring we have that September session that needs to take place tonight?
Just receive for information and then any other discussion council wishes to have.
Perfect. I'll get a motion to receive the
Moved.
downtown action
Second.
plan. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments about the discussion coming in September 2024? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. There are no notices of motion this evening. Under correspondence, under 286, we have a letter from Valerie Greenlaw with the Royal Canadian Legion for our 2024 Remembrance Day and flyby request. There are items A through D there. Are we able to do a motion to approve all of those together?
I would move all of those into the grant requests. Second.
Beautiful. That's moved and seconded. Thank you very much. And all those in favor for those 4 requests? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We're moving on to correspondence on page 287. We have the letter from Nicole Darling, Director of Corporate Services for Simba Investments in regards to the One Pond solution, and the letter from Sean Vincent at 1000 Richard for receipt and discussion.
Proceed.
It's been moved and seconded for receipt, and questions or comments on this letter of request for Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so this is an interesting proposal, and I realize that the town isn't in the development game, and this gets us somewhat close to that. But I think there's some issues here that may change it a little bit, and I would like to see staff bring us a report back on what the implications of this would be to the town and whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I just don't really know at this point, and I think that we just need a report from staff to tell us what we might be getting into there. So do you want that as a motion?
Yeah, I'll just get a quick clarification from CAO Wall. If there was a motion for a report from staff, what would be the most helpful parameters for what that would include, like what the scope of that information report would look like?
I think if council wishes for a report out, you could just motion for a report based on the requests submitted in the letter.
Perfect. So just that generic.
So should we do that after receipt?
We can do that now.
Okay, so I would do that, just a report based on the scope of the letters.
Okay, so that motion is on the floor. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Questions or comments on receiving a report on the One Pond for the 1000 Richard area? Councillor Mayer.
I think staff would do this anyway, but I guess I'm curious about what the implications could be in terms of density for that area, and considering kind of the complete communities work and the future OCP. So a little bit of just a bit of thoughtful analysis of what it means to the growth and development of that area.
That's a question for staff. Get a repeated question.
I think what we would do in a response back or in a report on this letter would be to take a look at specifically what the benefits and cost of the town taking on this project, the stormwater project. We have previous information around different land uses that could be managed in this area, and we can share that information. It wasn't brought to this council, it brought to the previous council, but all that work has been done. So we could share that with council, and then this analysis would be specifically on the benefits and costs for the provision of the stormwater fund.
Historically, has the town of Comox ever gone into that type of pond building before and had basically those zones where they paid for that, or is that something that we have not done within the town of Comox before, specific to the water management?
Specifically, in the past has been driven by development. This, as CAO Wall said, like this came to council in early 2021 with different options of the town taking it on and doing it, and the decision at that point was a pretty high risk for the town to take it on and build something that potentially, what is the timing of the development that would be carrying on those huge capital costs. And at that time, that was the council's motion, that the developers either jointly work together with each other or go on their own and build development, either funds as needed for their development.
Thank you, Director Ashfield. Other questions or comments before we vote on getting a staff report on the feasibility of that? No further questions. All those in favor? And opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Just get organized here. So we have no late items this evening. We will go to short reports, if any, from members of council at this late hour of things that you think are important to share with council, less about some of the events we all attended many of this last weekend. Thank you all again. But anything around the table you want to share, Councillor Blacklock.
Well, I'd share that I had the distinct pleasure of volunteering with the Comox Valley Hospice Society this weekend, flipping pancakes. Actually, they took me off pancakes and made me flip sausages. They said I was not qualified for pancakes. And really great to see the Hospice Society is a new participant in the pancake fundraiser, taking over for the Kinsman Club. And I think they had a really good weekend. And I know I had a great weekend visiting with people and having fun on stage with the some of the musical acts. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swift.
Thank you. I attended the Filbert board meeting. It's just a regular meeting, but it was just prior to the festival, so they were getting all geared up. And I think the festival went pretty well. And they've got some things they're exploring for the future of the park thing. So stay tuned.
Councillor Haslett.
News from the Stair Center. Previous President Raymond Moore stepped down, and thank you very much. He was really great to work with. However, Myrna Holman has stepped up, and she is now the acting president of Stair. Has lots of experience in both for-profit and non-profit organizations. So I know that the board there is really looking forward to working with her, as well as the addition of the executive director, Alan Joe. So great news from that. Now the days went on fantastic. I still stand by what I said that if it comes down to stages,
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo the mayor's comments and thank everyone involved with Nautical Days Festival and the Filbert Festival. So many volunteers for both events, specifically Dave Stevenson and the organizing committee. Big thank you to Councillor Haslett for bringing the fish toss back this year. There's a lot of work that he put into that. Congrats to Mayor Minions on your bronze medal in that event. I know you'll be training for silver or gold next year. The last thank you I want to do is really heartfelt one to the first responders, St. John's First Aid Ambulance, Comox Fire Service, and the paramedics that showed up from time to time. There were quite a few medical emergencies related to the heat, and they all did an amazing job. Great teamwork in the crowd, in the heat, and saved one life at least. So it was just amazing work by the team. On another note, I had a chance to meet with the Make Back Road Safe group, including some residents just on the Comox portion of Back Road, and that's around the sewer conveyance project. So just for anyone that's concerned about the construction that's happening with the sewer conveyance, especially as it pertains to that impending roundabout at the top of the hill and how it affects Back Road, I encourage you to go to the Comox Valley Regional District website and check out all of the information. There's tons of slides and pictures. And if you have any questions, please submit them through the Engage Comox Valley website. Thanks.
Just want to say that I also went down to the pancake flipping extravaganza where I had to actually give them out, and he got fired for a good reason. They were not great pancakes. You kind of had to hide your face when you were giving away. But anyway, it was good fun. So yes, so the RD board, it was a really long meeting, but most of it was in camera, so I won't bore you with all of that. But Mount Washington passed, we passed their MRDT, so they have their own separate MRDT, so that got passed. They got their community works money and they got 1.19 million ongoing. It raises a little bit as it goes, but that's roughly the number. I'll skip the community grants that we gave away. And we also did looked at a feasibility study for a new arena for a third rink. They gave us 4 options. One was to build a new rink beside the one that's already there and then retrofit the old one with about 500 new seats. You could put a running track around that and put a breezeway in between. And that would be about 45 to 50 million. You'd only end up with 1,350 seats at that though. So whether or not that would work, I don't know. The second one was a new rink down where the artificial turf field is for soccer, with 2,000 seats. That gets up to 80 million bucks. And then a new rink up near where the existing rinks are, and that was about 88 million. And then another option would be a community rink with no seating, which would be about 45 million. So that's gone back to sort of flush out what the best options are there. And I know we're really in need of more ice. The big question is, do you want something you could run bigger events and do bigger issues in? So that will come back to the rec commission probably in the fall. So that's what I do.
Thanks, Councillor Grant. Councillor Mayer.
Thanks. I will keep it really short. For the Comox Museum, we are looking for board members, and we are also heading into kind of vision and strategy time. So if you know any folks who love community museums and are excited about kind of vision and strategy related to that, please send them our way. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Just a couple of events that came up in July. There was the Comox First Nations treaty signing, which brought a lot of dignitaries to the community the 3rd week of July. So they are kind of moving along to where they will look at ratifying or not through their membership. So there's going to be a lot of information coming out for us, Q&As around what that looks like, the land package, the cash package, how it affects our region. There's lots of good economic opportunities for everyone to work with the First Nation, but the actual signing day itself was a 3 or 4 hour event, and it was a very heartwarming event. It was a lot of people that shared the history over the last, I think it's been since 1992 to get to that point. So it was a special day down at their cultural hall down there back in July. We will try to get more and more information and FAQs for us to be able to share with the council when we're being asked about this, as this will be taking place over the next 2 to 4 years. It's a longer process once ratified, if ratified, and there's lots of information out there. I won't say what, because there's still some information that's being determined. David Eby, the Premier, was in town to announce that the Urgent and Primary Care Centre has been extended. It was a temporary trial pilot, and now it is going to be a permanent fixture in the Comox Valley, and they are doubling their staff. It is at an unknown location, and they're still looking for that location, but Premier Eby gave Councillor Kerr a call out for his work with getting doctors, 45 plus doctors into the community. And that was a nice announcement to hear that they're really working on getting every individual a family doctor, and also looking at this primary care model that gets people from going to the ER and hospital. So that was a nice announcement to see funding coming into Courtenay Comox for that. We have the wing commander changeover, which said goodbye to Colonel Gagnon and his retirement. And we have the new wing commander, Colonel Christopher Shapka, who joined us this weekend at many of the events. So him and his family have arrived. I just want to say overall, there's lots of new faces at the different organizations. We have a new RCMP inspector that we met earlier, a new wing commander, a new deputy wing commander. And so lots of new faces, and they're really being integrated well with the different leadership groups and really coming and trying to learn what's happening in the Valley. So right off the bat, we're seeing really good communication and kind of a will to show up and learn what everyone's doing. So far, that's been really great, seeing those new faces in town. And lastly, we have the electric waste management or garbage fleet, where we have the 9 trucks coming to the Comox Valley from Ontario. They're piloting that here in the Comox Valley as it's the right size and location. And they just went through some of the technical details that our staff, our fire departments, all the different areas will need. And I believe the start date of that is about now. It was mid-August to early September. So that was in the news, but I'm not sure residents really know that we'll have a full electric fleet from now on, coming from Mack Trucks with Emterra. And that was a bit of a announcement. I know Mayor Wells was on the news this morning talking more about that. So coming to our community about now. And that is it for now. So I will move to go in camera at 7:55. If I can get a motion to go in camera. The seconder, all those in favor? So I will thank the public and senior staff for attending our meeting this evening. Thank you so much for your time. And we will take about 2 minutes for chambers to clear out, and then we are going in camera. Do I have time to go back there? We're just going to go back. We missed questions from the floor, and it's through process we're able to go back. So questions from the floor for those who have been here. Thank you. My apologies. That was an error. Councillor Blacklock, can we just get Councillor Blacklock? Can we just get you to sit down? An error passed over at public questions. And I do apologize. That was just an error. Thank you.
I'm just wondering if council and staff are prepared for invasive species in the town of Comox. And the reason why I bring this up is because I was reading on page 74 in the agenda that says the town currently has 13 existing retention ponds. One pond has invasive plants that are being maintained on a regular basis to attempt to remove the species and control the spread. We are not aware of any infestation of invasive animals such as bullfrogs in any pond. Today I went to Ash Pond, which is in the Foxwood Foxwood Estates, and there are bullfrogs in Ascot Pond, and so they're coming, and so probably they will be moving on. So if it's that close, and now we have Salish, which is the next pond, I would imagine that that's going to be soon. So just so you are aware, there are invasive bullfrogs in the town of Comox. When I was there, I was looking around and someone was walking by and they said, it's only been the last 2 years that they arrived. And it was so loud this year that many people on that pond were moving to the front of their house. It was that loud. So.
Thank you for sharing that. Did you want to question through to staff about invasive species?
Yeah,
or
like
more
what
of a
is
comment?
the plan for dealing with bullfrogs, because they are.
Okay, and we may be able to answer it tonight. It may be a
Oh, yeah,
follow-up
for sure.
question, but
Yeah.
just over to CEO Wall for it.
I'll get Robbie to reach out to you and have a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And we have Mel.
I did have a question. Is it possible to change the, I guess it'd be the bylaw that allows drive-throughs on those two pieces of property that we discussed this evening? Just for people that are new here, that was very contentious when it was allowed in at the A&W. And it's only because of the greenhouse gases. I mean, if these guys are wanting to be green, that ain't going to do it. In fact, I mentioned it to them after the meeting. So is it possible to change that? I mean, it would change their plan, obviously, because they probably want parking instead of driving through. But I think it should always be on top of mind. What we have paid, what's the greenhouse gas effect? And I won't mention traffic service.
I will, I could go over to staff, but I think we wouldn't be looking at changing the current commercial unit, but there would be potential to have the discussion around the addition of the new drive-through. That was one of the questions I kind of asked earlier. Is that something we can still be looking at second reading? And yes, on the new one, I don't believe we can go backwards on a commercial business that has that established zone. So yes and no, depending on if it's the new or the old, but that's something council would have a discussion around. And perhaps a discussion on the history of that, as I know it's contentious, but don't know all the points about it. We'll have that discussion, I believe. Other questions? Yes, come on up.
Hi, my name is Trish Johnson. I was on the BIA for 11 years, one of the founders of it. We owned commercial buildings in Comox, recently sold out a couple of years ago. I have a real problem with the neighbors' dogs on the beach and on our very long driveway. And then there was the pig, which is probably like 500 pounds. It's absolutely disgusting. This whole issue has been going on for years with the dogs on the beach and not being able to go swimming without being barked at and being just absolutely afraid of that. And I really want to know what kind of solutions can be dealt with. I've gone to the band. I phoned the police. They don't deal with it. The SPCA doesn't deal with it unless it's abandonment or the animals being hurt. And so here I am. I've got a problem. It's an ongoing problem. It probably even affects our property value, which is quite high because we're on the beach. And so I need to know what's a good idea? What's my next step in this whole thing? Because I want it resolved. It's absolutely a terrible way to live. Anybody got any more?
Can I just get a clarifying question just for our information? When it is
Yes.
where you're on the beach that you're walking, is it in the town of Comox or is it in multi-jurisdiction? Just to kind of
No,
understand.
it's in the town of Comox. It's right beside Emerald Shores.
For context down there on the beach.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you go halfway up the hill, there's a driveway that goes down off the houses down there. You go around.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of in the rough area, but not the exact area.
So I don't know whether it can be resolved tonight, obviously not. But there has been numerous neighbors bring this forward. Nothing's ever been done. Everybody has pretty well given up on it because there's no help. And I mean, I bought an air horn for bears and bear spray. Like, this is getting really ridiculous and serious. It's only one dog at this point, and I need to know what's the next step for me.
Okay, I'd be happy to follow up with you, Trish, after I make a phone call to kind of see where the animal bylaw in the multi-jurisdiction conversation was. So in the very near future, I can chat with you offline.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for those comments.
For Ken Grant, because I worked with him for years on the BIA. So if you wouldn't mind me being able to give him the note.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
If Councillor Grant accepts the note. Thank you for the question, Trish. Any other questions from the public before we go to our in-camera session? Okay, I apologize again for missing that section, and we will move to go in camera at 8:03. If I can please get a motion and a seconder. And all those in favor of going in camera at 8:03. Okay, we'll just take 2 minutes for council to